in lieu of in-person testimony. To better facilitate today's proceedings, I ask you to follow these procedures. Please turn off your cell phone and other electronic devices. The order of the testimony is the introducer, proponents, opponents, neutrals, and closing remarks. If you will be testifying, please complete the green form and hand it to the committee clerk when you come up to testify. If you have written materials you would like to distribute to the committee, please hand them to the page to distribute. We need 10 copies for all committee members and staff. If you need additional copies, please ask the page to make copies for you now. When you begin to testify, please state and spell your name for the record. Please be concise. This might request that you limit your testimony to 3 minutes. We use the light system, 2 minutes on green, 45 seconds on yellow, and then 15 seconds on red, so you know to wrap up. If your remarks reflected in the previous testimony or you would like your position to be known but do not wish to testify, please sign the white form at the back of the room and it will be included in the official record. Please speak directly into the microphones. Our transcribers are able to hear testimony. I'd like to introduce committee staff. To my immediate left is legal counsel Charles Hamilton. To my left at the end of the table is committee clerk Thomas Weekly. Now I'd like the committee members with us today to introduce themselves, beginning at my far right.
Kathleen Kauth, LD 31, the Millard area of Omaha.
Dave Merman from Glenville, District 38. I represent 8 counties, mostly along the southern border in the middle part of the state.
Brad Von Gillern, District 4, West Omaha.
Hi, Joni Albright, District 17, Northeast Nebraska.
Fred Meyer, St. Paul, District 41, Central Nebraska.
And our pages today, if they would stand up, please. We have Mia, who's a UNL political science major, and Colin, who's a UNL criminal justice major. Please remember that senators may come and go during our hearing as they may have bills to introduce in other committees. Please refrain from applause or other indications to support or opposition. For our audience, the microphones in the rooms are not for amplification, but for recording purposes only. Lastly, we use electronic devices to distribute information. Therefore, you may see committee members reference information on their electronic devices. Please be assured that your presence here today and your testimony are important to us and is a critical part of state government. And Senator Hardin, I made a mistake. Actually, we have I thought you were first, but we have Jacqueline Russell for confirmation. So I don't know if you would I don't think that will take very long. But Senator Bostar wasn't here, so that's why I panicked and called him. Okay, with that, we'll start the hearing on Jacqueline Russell. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Senator Linehan, members of the Revenue Committee. My name is Jacqueline Russell. That's Russell. And most of you know me as Jackie, I think, in this room. But I'm here today to seek confirmation for my recent appointment for Governor Pillen to the at-large Tax Equalization Review Commissioner position. I believe you all have a copy of my resume with you, but I'll just do a little bit about background information for you. I'm a native Nebraskan. I was born and raised in Hastings, Nebraska. I graduated from the Hastings public school system there. And then I later went on to receive my Bachelor's of Science in Business Administration from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. My emphasis was on finance and management at that time. But I did have an elective course that got me interested in real estate and appraisal. So then after I graduated from college, I got my real estate salesperson's license. And then in 2007, I accepted a position with the Adams County Assessor's Office on the appraisal staff, where I began doing work and valuations and statistical measuring for the Adams County Assessor's Office. In 2011, I received my assessor certification from the Nebraska Department of Revenue. And then I later went on to serve as the Adams County Assessor from 2015 until my appointment to the Tax Equalization Review Commission. So, if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to entertain those.
Thank you very much. Are there questions to the committee? Are you new to the new?
Yes, very new.
Okay,
I
well,
started
thank
on
you
the
for your
29th.
service. See, no questions from the committee. Thank you for being here.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
You're welcome. That will close the hearing on, I'm sorry. Thank you. Pretty soon, Von Gillern's going to go just give me that. And I might. Is there any proponent testimony?
I'm in trouble already.
Hopefully not.
Good afternoon, distinguished members of the Revenue Committee. My name is John Cannon, Joncannon. I'm the Executive Director of NACO, here to testify in support of the appointment of Jacqueline Russell to be a Tax Equalization Review Commission Commissioner. I've known Ms. Russell for a long time. It was actually before she became the assessor in the office. She was, I believe, the chief appraiser in Adams County. But since then, since she didn't want to brag on herself, I will. She became the president of the Nebraska Association of County Assessors. She was appointed to Governor Pillen's Evaluation Reform Working Group. A number of you served on that committee with her. And for my own part, I've always known her to be really want to be fair to the landowners in her county. A lot of arguments that we had when I was at the department and she was in the assessor's office about, well, that's just not right. It's not right by my taxpayers. And sometimes I said no, sometimes I agreed with her, but she's always interested in the best interest of the taxpayers. She definitely believes in what's right, and we're going to be sad to lose her as an elected official in the state of Nebraska. And I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the committee? Senator Albright.
Thank you, Chair Linehan, and thank you for being here.
Yes,
When
ma'am.
I saw you as one of her references, I had to pause. But now that you say that she argued with you and then I'm sure she'll be just right for the job.
She argued with me so much.
I like to hear that. Thanks for being here.
Yes, ma'am.
I think that's a compliment. Thank you, Senator Albright. Are there any other questions to the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Are there other proponents? Are there any opponents? Anyone want to testify in the neutral position? Do we have any letters? No letters. So with that, we will close the hearing on Ms. Russell and open the hearing on, we're going to skip down to LB 1026. Welcome, Senator Hardin. Thank you for coming early. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chairwoman Linehan, and good afternoon, fellow senators of the Revenue Committee. I'm Senator Brian Hardin. For the record, that's BrianHardin, and I represent the Banner, Kimball, and Scottsbluff counties of the 48th Legislative District in Western Nebraska. I'm before you today to introduce LB 1026, which was brought to me by State Treasurer Breezy. LB 1026 protects enable savings plans from being seized, taken, appropriated, or applied by any legal or equitable process or operation of law to pay any debt or liability of the owner of the account. The Achieving a Better Life Experience, known as ABLE, Act was passed on the federal level in December of 2014. This authorized individuals with disabilities to open tax-exempt savings accounts to save for disability-related expenses without impacting eligibility for resource-based benefits. Without these accounts, individuals with disabilities would not be able to save more than $2,000 in assets. These accounts allow up to $100,000 before it starts to affect some benefits. Nebraska signed the Enable Savings Plan into law in May of 2015, and it is overseen by the Nebraska Treasurer's Office. Since its inception in 2015, it has grown steadily, and as of January 31st, 2024, the Enable program has helped individuals with disabilities open 3,895 accounts and holds $38,681,521 in assets under management. The Enable Savings Plan has been life-changing for many Nebraskans with disabilities. Having a place to save money, no longer having to needlessly spend money to keep under resource limits, encouraging independence and building confidence. These are all things that Enable has been able to do for its account owners. I want to make sure that we continue to protect the assets that have been so carefully saved by these individuals. This bill would prevent a garnishment, lien, or otherwise to take money from these accounts. We already have these protections on the college savings plans, section 85-1809, paragraph 1. So it's important that we extend the same protection to the Enable savings plans. I'm prepared to answer any easy questions you may have. However, Stacy Pfeiffer from the State Treasurer's Office will also be speaking on behalf of Enable Savings Plans and can answer any hard questions you may have.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Are there any questions from the committee? Senator Cal.
Thank you, Chair Linehan. Senator Hardin, does this apply after, if the person who owns the account passes away? Is it still applying, or can it then be tapped into for liens?
I'm going to say that's a hard question.
I will ask. Maybe the
Sometimes-
next person. or
Sometimes
anyone who
punting on
knows that.
first down is
Okay.
my best option. So,
Great. Thank you.
thanks.
Thank you, Senator Cal. Are there other questions from the committee? Thank you very much. I get a state of close. Okay. Proponents. Do we have proponents? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Members of the Revenue Committee, my name is Stacy Pfeiffer, STACYPFEIFER, and I am the Director of the Enable Savings Program. I am here today to testify in favor of LB 1026. And my children made you all Valentines for Valentine's Day today, so they're passing this up to you. So happy Valentine's Day. I want to thank Senator Hardin for giving us the history of the plan and for introducing this bill. As he stated, as of January 31st, we have helped individuals with disabilities open 3,895 accounts and hold over $38 million in assets. And as of today, we're at 3,900 and a little over 39 million in assets. And about 66% of the overall assets and 63% of accounts are held by Nebraskans, and then the rest are held by people in other states. The Nebraska Treasurer's Office is honored and humbled to be able to help these individuals in this way, and we're looking forward to helping more of them. Part of my job as director of the program is to educate people all over Nebraska about this plan. I get asked lots of questions, listen to concerns that people have. This last year, I had 66 different events, presentations, and individual meetings with people across the state of Nebraska. And so through listening to potential account owners, we realized that this was a gap in our law, and we wanted to make sure that we have these protections codified into law and to give our account owners the comfort in the security of their savings. And as Senator Hardin said, this has already been a part of the 529 college savings law. And I gave you guys a copy of that also, so you could kind of see that they're mirroring each other. And I'd be happy to answer any hard questions that you guys have.
Thank you very much. Ms. Pfeiffer, are there questions from the committee?
Can I ask my hard question?
Senator Powell.
Same question.
Yes, okay. So when a person passes away, the money would go to an estate. So in that process, then that would be where you would have garnishments and
So they can't transfer it out to another beneficiary.
So
Unless it's
the
familial
legislature
or-
passed a law last year where if it's $5,000 or less, it could transfer
Okay,
automatically
but
to
5,000
beneficiaries.
or less.
Yes,
Okay,
right.
thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you. Other questions from the committee? Did the law we passed last year had to be a family member though, right?
No, it could be just a named, whoever they name as a
Okay.
beneficiary.
Okay, but anything 5,000 or less?
Correct.
Okay. All right, are there other questions from the committee? Yes.
Just a quick one. So these funds are invested just like the Nebraska College Savings Plan, the same,
Yeah, it's
Investment plan.
yes, it's in a trust.
okay,
Yes, yeah.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Meyer. Any other questions?
I just have a comment. I did have the bill last year, and I thank you for the refresher.
Thank you, Senator Murray. That was my recollection. No other questions? Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. Other proponents?
Hello. My name is Edison McDonald, Edison, McDonald, here representing the ARC of Nebraska. We're the state's largest organization representing people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families. We support this bill as a simple cleanup to help people with disabilities be better able to access employment opportunities. Just to give you an idea of how this looks on the ground for a family is that they'll have to go and make a decision between, do I go and spend frivolously on dumb items that they don't need so that they can spend down to keep within their threshold? This allows them instead to focus on key tools. So I've seen so many of our members who are people with disabilities who have been able to work more, take raises because of this valuable tool. Other than that, if y'all have any questions, that's all I'm here for.
Thank you very much. Are there questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much. Are there other proponents?
Madam Chairman, members of the committee, good afternoon. For the record, my name is John Hansen, John, Hansen, Hansen. I think this is a common sense bill. It's a fairness bill for as far as I can see it. I have a lot of experience with folks with disabilities in my family and also in my volunteer work. And anything that you can do to help folks with very limited amounts of money in their lives and earning capacity, squirrel away some money for those times when they really do need them and can be useful, is an extremely, I think, positive tool. And so that is my testimony, and I'd be glad to answer any easy questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there other proponents? Any other proponents? Are there any opponents? Is anyone wanting to testify in the neutral position? Senator Hardin, would you like to close? Senator Hardin waives closing. Do we have record? Do you remember, Thomas?
I just haven't, no letters.
No letters. Okay, that's why we can't find them. Okay, with that, we close the hearing on 10:26. Thank you, Senator Hardin. And we still have no Senator Bostar, so. Do we have any idea how long Senator Bostar is going to be?
I can go, but I don't know if my.
If anybody in Senator Brandt's office is watching, we need Senator Brandt. Jackson.
SOS.
Call Tom Brandt.
That's sweet.
Hey, Tom.
We're hyper efficient here.
Guys tore me away from our one bill and natural resources. All right.
Good afternoon.
Huh?
Don't rub it in.
Okay.
Be here all afternoon.
You guys ready?
We're ready.
Okay. Good afternoon, Chair Linehan and members of the Revenue Committee. My name is Tom Brandt, T-O-M-B-R-A-N-D-T, and I represent Legislative District 32, Fillmore, Thayer, Jefferson, Saline, and southwestern Lancaster counties. Today, I'm introducing LB 1047, which updates the assessment of the fee for the Agriculture Alcohol Fuel Tax Fund, or the AAF-TF, to reflect current industry practice. The Agriculture Alcohol Fuel Tax Fund was established in 1971 and is the funding source used by the Nebraska Ethanol Board to carry out its statutory mission and duties. The Nebraska Ethanol Board is an independent, cash-funded state agency working to develop the renewable fuels industry in Nebraska. Today, the AAF-TF is funded through an excise tax of 1.25 cents per gallon of denaturant purchased by an ethanol producer. I have testifiers following me that will be able to fill in more details regarding the ethanol board and its funding. For now, I will provide a little context for those not familiar with the process of denaturing alcohol. Since the very beginning of the U.S. ethanol industry, producers have been federally required to ensure that their ethanol is unfit for human consumption. This practice is called denaturing and is typically accomplished by mixing the ethanol product with a natural gasoline, a substandard low-cost gasoline. As a result of this practice, the original statute for the AAF-TF was only narrowly encompasses natural gasoline. Over time, the requirements surrounding the practice of denaturing ethanol have changed by way of the amount, method, location, and type of denaturant that is allowed to be used. In summary, ethanol producers are utilizing new denaturants that aren't specified in existing statute, and in certain markets may now denature ethanol at destination ports, terminals, as opposed to on-site. These two changes have created a regulatory environment where select ethanol producers no longer remit to the AAF-TF, whereas the vast majority of them still do. LB 1047 updates existing statute to reflect these new practices, first by expanding the list of denaturants, including those produced from renewable resources, and assessing the same 1.25 cent per gallon rate across 2% of sales of undenatured ethanol sold that is unfit for human consumption. The bill also includes some cleanup by re-alphabetizing definitions and reviewing old provisions of the Ethanol Producer Incentive Cash Fund, EPIC, which sunsetted in 2012. Overall, these updates ensure that the fee for the AAF-TF was assessed equitably across all ethanol producers without increasing the effective rate. This bill is important to ensure all are contributing equally, as the Ethanol Board's activities benefit all ethanol producers. LB 1047 is also integral for the agency to continue to operate effectively, as their loss of funding has already amounted to between 10 to 12% of annual revenues. Without the passage of LB 1047, the Nebraska Ethanol Board projects this amount to increase in coming years. Following me are testifiers that may be able to handle more technical questions regarding the bill. I would answer any questions.
Thank you, Senator Brandt. Are there any questions from the committee? Seeing none.
All right.
Thank you very much. Are there proponents?
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Linehan and members of the Revenue Committee. My name is Randy Gard, R-A-N-D-Y, G-A-R-D. I'm Chief Operating Officer at Boston Enterprises, which operates 48 convenience stores in Nebraska and is the largest retailer of E15 in the state. But I also serve as a secretary in my second term as a petroleum rep on the Nebraska Ethanol Board. Today, as a fuel retailer and on behalf of the NEB, I am testifying in support of LB 1047 that updates the assessments to the AAF-TF, which is a funding mechanism for the Nebraska Ethanol Board. The provisions within this bill keep up with new industry practice, ensure the fee is assessed equitably without raising the rate, and that the NEB has proper resources to carry out its mission. The NEB is a diverse coalition that represents the full value chain of our ethanol industry, including growers, processors, workforce, and distributors. I play a particularly interesting role as a petroleum rep on our board, which I find is one that offers great feedback on how we can get our renewable fuels to our customers across our state. But now we have set our sights on new exciting markets such as sustainable aviation fuel, or SAF, and renewable chemicals, and look forward to working with our ethanol industry to find the best ways to bring these opportunities to Nebraska. The NEB thanks Senator Brandt for bringing the bill to update the fund. Our executive director will follow with my comments and may be able to answer more detailed technical questions on the programs and its funding, but I'll do my best to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you very much. Are there questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Gardner.
Thank you very much.
Next proponent. Good afternoon.
Madam Chairman, again, good afternoon. For the record, my name is John Hansen, John, Hansen, Hansen, and I'm the president of Nebraska Farmers Union. Our organization helped build the public support for the adoption of and the creation of the Nebraska Ethanol Board in 1971. And so we have been really pleasantly pleased with the performance of what the Nebraska Ethanol Board has been able to do with such a limited amount of dollars over such an extended period of time, and would say that the waterfront, or in this case, the ethanol front, is ever changing, and that there's always new challenges, new opportunities from a marketing standpoint, from a technical standpoint. And I think Randy Gard did a good job of laying out a few of their priorities right now. But some of the things that they do relative to that are sitting there on the table relative to sustainable aviation fuel, not to mention some of the other uses and processes that are kind of on the drawing board right now, that it's important that our ethanol board be adequately funded. And so when it's so small to start with, and you look at a 10 to 12% reduction, that is significant. And so this is something that's been talked about for a while. And so we welcome the bill. We thank Senator Brandt for bringing it, and that it seems a relatively simple update given the technology and the processing, so that we're applying the relatively small fee across the board to all the different players. And so there is, I think, a good reason to do it sooner rather than later and wait till the bill gets larger. And so with that, I would end my comments and be glad to answer any questions if I could.
Thank you, Mr. Hansen. Are there questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there other proponents? Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? Does anyone want to testify in the neutral position? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Linehan and Revenue Committee. Happy Valentine's Day. My name is Dawn Caldwell, DAWN CALDWELL. I am the Executive Director of Renewable Fuels Nebraska. Renewable Fuels Nebraska is the membership association representing all of Nebraska's 24 ethanol plants, as well as renewable fuel plants intending to build in Nebraska and their associated businesses. Nebraska is the nation's second largest ethanol producer with a total production capacity of nearly 2.5 billion gallons annually. Combined, our 24 plants use more than 750 million bushels of corn per year and produce more than 6 million tons of distillers grains, a high protein livestock feed, as well as corn oil and other valuable co-products. RFN membership appreciates the aspect of LB 1047 that brings a level playing field to the industry in terms of funding of the Nebraska Ethanol Board. I have commented with several different people lately just how far the industry has progressed since the inception of the Ethanol Board and the work to stand up an industry that has become a key thread in the ag and economic fiber of our state. That progress is exactly why you're hearing this bill today. Advancements in production practices, utilization of products such as renewable naphtha as denaturant, and future opportunities such as sustainable aviation fuel production all lend to modernizing this state statute. We're here in the neutral position today because we believe that while the funding aspect of the Ethanol Board is being addressed, so should be the governance. As of now, the Ethanol Board members represent various grain commodities, general farming, industry, though not an ethanol company staff member, and fuel retail. That was a well thought out membership for a group working to stand up an industry. Ethanol production in Nebraska really took off in the 90s and has continued to grow to where it is today. Each of the ethanol companies remitting the excise tax, or checkoff as it is typically known, has no direct representation on the Ethanol Board. That is the epitome of taxation without representation. In summary, RFN membership expects further action to achieve majority representation on the Nebraska Ethanol Board to have a meaningful influence in how their dollars are invested. That concludes my testimony, and I would try to answer questions.
Thank you. Are there questions from the committee? Senator Cal.
Thank you, Chair Linehan. I read the opponent letter that came from Energy Adams, and he said the same thing that you guys are not. There's no ethanol producers that are represented on the ethanol board.
Right. There is one person who holds a production seat on the board, and he is on a board of an ethanol plant, but he is a farmer that sells grain to that ethanol plant. He's not in the day-to-day production business of the ethanol industry.
At what point do you think that that will change? That is there a way the composition of
We
the
have to
board
change
needs
a different state statute besides this one, actually. And so their ask would be that that statute also be opened up and that changed in the very sooner than later future.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cal. Are there other questions to the committee? Senator Albright.
Thank you, Chair. Have you sat down with Senator Brandt, and is he willing to amend what you say?
I believe, and I would suggest there's another neutral testifier coming after me that knows the exact code number. I believe it would need to be separately introduced legislation because of where the code lies in state statute.
So it couldn't be introduced till next year.
Possibly.
Thank you, Senator Albright. Other questions to the committee? Senator Merman.
Since Dawn is my neighbor, I'll have to ask her a question.
That's fair.
I know ethanol right now is very competitive with gasoline, so blending is a good thing right now to keep the price of gas down. Is it as competitive with sustainable aviation fuel, or how does it compare there?
Right. Sustainable aviation fuel is going to be a very lucrative opportunity for Nebraskans, and full disclosure, that is because of the IRA or the federal tax codes that offer the opportunity to build that industry. So as a next step, yes. And even further, as liquid fuel for vehicles levels off or theoretically in the future declines, that creates more opportunity for the corn ethanol that we have here in Nebraska, as well as soy oil too, for sustainable aviation fuel.
Thanks.
Thank you, Senator Merman. Other questions to the committee? Okay, I just want to make sure I understand. You have no problem with Senator Brandt's bill. So you're supporting what he's doing.
They just wish, my membership wishes, there was an aspect consecutively with this to change the governance of that board as well.
Okay, but nobody in your membership had somebody introduce that bill this year.
No, because no, yes, I'm winking at you. Yes.
All right. Okay. Any other questions from the committee? Thank you very much. Thank you. Other neutral.
Okay, everybody's got dinner reservations. Try to move this right through. Revenue Committee, Chairwoman Linehan. My name is Reid Wagner, spelled R-E-I-D-W-A-G-N-E-R, and I am the Executive Director of the Nebraska Ethanol Board. I'm really just here in neutral testimony, essentially to answer any last questions that you guys have related to this measure to actually make sure that our funding is equitable. I know Don had kind of pitched something to me from the previous testimony here, which is that we have been engaging with the ethanol industry actually for the last probably year of my employment with this board, basically at various times to talk through what our next steps do look like. And in some of our recent appointment testimony to the Natural Resources Committee, we actually kind of tackled this question. We started out as an economic development board. As the industry came to capacity that we know today, we moved more into a promotional, educational, and research kind of focus. And with new things like SAF, we're headed into an economic development space. And so right now we do lean on those production members. Most of our growers and the general farming rep on our board actually do either sit on boards of various ethanol plants or have investments in them and know the process very well. In particular, kind of moving forward, we do want to make sure that we're representative of what's happening in Nebraska so that we can capture the full value for the state. And that's been a conversation that's ongoing. And publicly at our last meeting, we actually did include a statement that does say that we're committed to working on this year. So that is an ongoing separate issue than the one that we're talking about here, which is making sure that if there is a fee, that it's applied equitably across the board and that it's, fairly assessed across everybody, not just, just to make sure that we're matching all of the industry practices today. So with that, I will just allow you guys any parting questions. We would be happy to answer anything you guys might need to know.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Are there any questions from the committee? See none. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Are there any others wanting to testify on the neutral position? Seeing none, Senator Brandt, would you like to close? And do we have? We do have 2 proponents, no opponents, and no neutral. Excuse me.
All right, real quick. Part of this bill is to update a statute that has been updated in many years. So there's some changes in there. And to clearly state what we're doing here, when an ethanol plant makes ethanol, it's pure grain alcohol. You have to add denaturant so that people don't drink this stuff. And that's what denaturant is. And when they first did this statute, they listed all the chemicals, and then when they add those chemicals, those are taxed at 2 cents or something like that. And that pays for the ethanol board. And subsequently, what's happened is there's other chemicals that were not in that list. And so that's very simply what this bill is. So if there are no questions.
Are there any questions from the committee? So their other issue, that doesn't even belong to this committee, does it?
No, I think it's in a different statute. He forgot to bring that up, but I would be happy to bring it up next year.
Very good.
Technical fix.
All right.
All right.
All right. Thank you very much. With that, we'll close the hearing on LB 1047 and open the hearing on Senator Van Gillern. You ready? Yep. Senator Van Gillern's 1047.
1295.
Oh. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. 1295.
See how that goes.
Welcome, Senator Van Gillern.
Thank you, Chairwoman Linehan and members of the Revenue Committee. I'm Senator Brad Von Gillern, BRADVONGILLERN. I represent Legislative District 4, which is West Omaha and portions of Elkhorn. Today I'm here for LB 1295. 1295 establishes a data match system between the Department of Revenue and financial institutions, facilitating the identification of tax debtors. It outlines the procedures for data matching, confidentiality measures, and the potential involvement of vendors. This isn't a new concept. This is already used by the state and by the federal government. It stems from the 1996 Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Reconciliation Act passed in 1996. This act made possible the Financial Institution Data Match, FIDM. One of the purposes of this was so government agencies can locate the assets of those who owe child support obligations. For the purposes of LB 1295 in our state, the Department of Revenue seeks to contract the services of an FIDM vendor that would receive and upload state data and compare that to the financial institution data in its possession. These results are then sent back to the Department of Revenue. This file then indicates any positive matches for tax debtor bank accounts. This saves times for both the Department of Revenue and banking staffs, as it eliminates a number of levy requests issued that do not result in a match. The Department of Revenue estimates a 20% increase in levy collections with the passage of this bill. Other savings will occur in reduced costs in postage, printing, and personnel time. The DOR estimates the additional recovery could be as much as $2 million a year, and the cost of services approximately $85,000 in the first year and around $65,000 in subsequent years. Additionally, I'm presenting an amendment to the committee for the bill. This request was from the Nebraska Bankers Association. AM 2148 simply strikes the effective date of the act as written and inserts January 1st, 2025 as the operative start date. Representing the department, a representative of the Department of Revenue will be following me and will be able to answer questions regarding the process, the contractor, these estimates, alleviate some privacy concerns in the current situation regarding the state use of FIDM. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Senator Van Gillern. Are there questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, proponents. I'm worried about our next senator being late already.
Senator, so.
You were right. I was targeted. Welcome.
So thank you, Chairwoman Linehan and distinguished members of the Revenue Committee. For the record, my name is Jim Kamm, Jimkamm, and I serve as a tax commissioner for the state of Nebraska, and I'm here today to testify in support of LB 1295. I want to start out my testimony by thanking Senator Von Gillern for introducing this bill. I'm also going to say my testimony may be a little bit of a review of what Senator Von Gillern just laid out, but I'll try to move through this fairly quickly. I apologize in advance for any redundancies here. This legislation enables the Department of Revenue to utilize a bank match system, as Senator Von Gillern pointed out, in its efforts to collect delinquent taxes. It's similar to the system currently used by DHHS to collect child support payments. The department makes numerous attempts to work with taxpayers to voluntarily collect delinquent payments. Despite these efforts, and as you might imagine, we still have a number of taxpayers that don't comply with these voluntary efforts. Bank match is frequently referred to as financial institution data match, again, as Senator Von Gillern pointed out, or FIDM. The department would like to contract the services of a FIDM vendor to modernize its ability to collect delinquent tax debts. From department research, there are currently 24 states that have enacted legislation to use an account matching process to collect delinquent tax debts. As the use of online banking has become more prevalent, locating delinquent taxpayer bank assets has become more challenging. Under the present framework, when collection efforts have advanced to the point where the department is forced to garnish funds in an account at a financial institution, public servants within the Department of Revenue can spend hours researching where a tax debtor might have an account and must frequently send requests and inquiries to several financial institutions to locate a viable account. With LB 1295, the FIDM vendor which acts as the intermediary between the department and the banks, would upload data to the delinquent taxpayers, which is then compared to the records of the financial institution accounts that it has in its possessions. The results of that comparison would then be sent back to the department. The file provided to the department would indicate any positive matches for delinquent taxpayer accounts. Based on the experience of other revenue departments that have implemented the use, again, as Senator Von Gillern pointed out, we could expect a 20% increase in levy collections. LB 1295 will create efficiency and effectiveness in the collection of the state tax debt. LB 1295 will save funds spent on postage, handling, and printing. Since the department could submit a single, I see my time's up, request additional time to finish. Thank you, Chairwoman Linehan. Submit a single levy request for a verified account instead of multiple levy requests to different financial institutions in an attempt to find a levy source. With LB 1295, the cost of debt recovery services will be offset by the additional recovery made possible through the FIDM process. We've estimated additional collections to the state of Nebraska about $2 million a year, with costs the first year of $85,000, $65,000 in subsequent years thereafter. Really, it's consistent with my confirmation, where we're trying to provide as revised statute L 77361 point requires the department, among other duties, to provide for efficient and updated system of revenue accounting, reporting, enforcement related activities. 1295 is consistent with that statute. It's also going to save the financial institutions in our state time and effort in researching these, because they're going to get less levy requests because we're going to hone in on the right people to send the levies to. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions any of the committee members may have today.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there questions from the committee? Senator Couch.
Thank you, Chair Linehan. In the bill, it says that nothing in the section shall require a financial institution to disclose the account number assigned, and it's not a lien, correct? How do you collect the money, just knowing where it is?
Well, we serve it, we'd serve the levy or the garnishment on the financial institution, and they're required within a certain period of time to respond to that. And then they're required by law to remit those funds to the bank if there's any funds in that account.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Senator Calhoun. Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for being here.
Yes, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Are there other proponents? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair Linehan, members of the committee. My name is Ryan McIntosh, MCINTOSH, and I appeared before you today as a registered lobbyist for the Nebraska Bankers Association to testify in support of LB 1295. As has already been said, the provisions of LB 1295 were almost verbatim copied from the child support data match system that was implemented through the cooperative efforts of the NBA over 25 years ago. The NBA worked very closely with the Nebraska Legislature to establish a workable framework that also protected customer data and privacy. We certainly appreciate the fact that Senator Von Gillern reached out to the NBA in advance of introducing LB 1295. We were able to work with Senator Von Gillern and the Department of Revenue to ensure that the data match system proposed under LB 1295 would be closely aligned with the existing child data match system to prevent an additional and undue burden on Nebraska's financial institutions. Banks take their obligation to safeguard their customers' financial information very seriously. It is vitally important for the confidentiality of bank depositors' account information to be maintained with the exchange of information between banks and the Department of Revenue. LB 1295 provides adequate confidentiality protections for account information shared with the Department of Revenue. LB 1295 also provides banks with protections for providing information to the department in order to comply with the requirements of the Act. The bill also authorized banks to recover their costs for compliance with data reporting and requirements of the Act. For these reasons, we respectfully request the committee advance LB 1295 as well as the amendment to delay the operative date to allow time to get this framework in place before it becomes law. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions to the committee? Seeing none, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Next proponent. Are there any proponents? Opponents? Do we have opponents? Someone wishing to testify in the neutral position?
Chair Linehan, members of the committee, my name is Dexter Schrodt, DEXTERSCHRODT. I am President and CEO of the Nebraska Independent Community Bankers Association, here to testify in neutral on LB 1295. There's pieces of LB 1295 that we do like. There's pieces we don't like. But in general, I just can't in good conscience support a mandate on our community banks. So first, the things we do like, we appreciate the confidentiality and liability provisions of the bill, as well as the ability to charge the department for our expenses in conducting the matches. And we do appreciate that Section 5 requires reporting to both the State Treasurer and the Revenue and Appropriations Committee. Although I would point out that the report to the committee appears to only talk about revenues, whereas the report to the treasurer includes both revenues and the expenses for the contracts and the expenses from the banks. So just so you're aware, the items that we do not like. In particular, we really don't like page 3, lines 10 through 13. It talks about how we must remit the names and addresses of all other owners of accounts in the match listing. And it doesn't go into detail on what exactly this information is going to be used for. So we do have privacy concerns about other customers that might be caught up and on the same account as a tax debtor. And, you know, that's been a hot topic in our industry recently with the emergence of central bank digital currency and the privacy concerns there. So it is a little concerning to see that they would just be on a list somewhere in the Department of Revenue. That doesn't make me feel exactly warm and fuzzy. There's also a little bit of confusion. I think the language is confusing. It appears to have the department has 30 days after the end of a quarter to send the list to financial institutions. The bank has 30 days to compare the matches, but then it talks about how once the matches are found, it has 5 days to remit the matches. We think it'd be a lot more clear if it just said that the bank has 30 days to compare and remit matches. That way there's no issues of compliance and questions on whether it's being done properly. And for those reasons, we are neutral. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other questions from the committee? Senator Dungan.
Thank you, Chairman Hannah. Thank you for being here. I also sit on the banking committee, so I probably should know this already. Is there any kind, and I genuinely don't know, is there any kind of duty of confidentiality that banks share with their patrons, or is it more of a best practices, want to make sure that these things are protected because you owe that to your customers? I just don't know if there's an actual like ethical obligation due to some outside force, or if that's more of just what you're trying to protect because it is an issue between you and customers.
There are federal laws regarding privacy of banks and their account holders, if you will. However, any other law or regulation can supersede that, if you will. So as long as we're in compliance with all laws and regulations regarding privacy, then I don't think there's much concern.
So you don't think this runs afoul of the laws? It just causes you concern that people who aren't involved in this might get caught up with regards to the information being shared with the department?
Correct. Yeah, I do believe that the state would have the authority to gather the account information that I pointed out of non-tax debtors that are on the accounts of tax debtors. It just makes me uneasy.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Dungan. Are there other questions for the committee? So are you talking like, you can see non-debtors, you're talking about a joint account?
Yeah, exactly, Senator. So for example, a 3-member LLC that has both an EIN and the individual members of the LLC are on the accounts would be tied to their socials. So if one of those members of the LLC was personally owing tax to the state, then it's potential that the other 2 LLC members would be sent in this list as well. And we just don't feel that appropriate.
Okay. Did you talk to Senator Von Gillern about this?
I did chat with Senator Von Gillern last week about the bill. Unfortunately, we were not approached by the department before the bill was introduced, so I have been unable to speak to them.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Other questions? Thank you for being here. Appreciate it. Any others wanting to testify in the neutral position? Senator Von Gillern, would you like to close?
Thank you, committee members and those who testified. Just a couple of quick clarifications. The language in this bill is, to the best of my knowledge and intent, exactly what was passed to collect on child support through the child support system. And that system has been in place for some time. And I have heard of no issues regarding concerns around privacy or inappropriate use of the information that's been collected. It's been a successful system and it's worked well to collect, I'll just use the term deadbeat money. And that's what we're looking for here, is to pursue taxpayers that owe taxes and are trying to hide where their resources are. I appreciate Mr. Schroed's testimony, and if there's some concerns that we need to work through, that's fine. The one clarification, the taxes, if there's an LLC listed, that would be listed typically under an EIN number, an employee identification number, probably not personal social security numbers unless it's a sole member LLC, which in which case it gets taxed as that sole member, and then it would be collectible. But I'm probably getting a little bit in the weeds there, maybe a little bit over my head too. But anyway, the intent is very simple. It's a system that exists. The banks are using it already. The child care collections or the child care collection systems that are in place are working very well. One of the things you've probably heard me over the years ad nauseum use the term return on investment, and based on the numbers we're seeing, it's a 23.5 ROI, and I'd sign up for that all day long. So if there's some small issues we need to work through regarding privacy or something, I'd be more than happy to do that. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Senator Von Gillern. Are there any questions from the committee? Seeing none, do we have letters? We have one in a neutral position, could be the same issue. Thank you. And with that, we'll close the hearing on LB 1295, and we will open the hearing on LB 1228. Welcome, Senator Wayne. Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day. Thank you, Chairwoman Linehan and the Revenue Committee. My name is Justin Wayne, today affectionately known as Cupid. That's K, not C, U-I-U-P-I-D. Justin Wayne, W-A-Y-N-E. This bill is really simple. So last year, the Good Life Transformational Project Act was passed. I had some hesitancy, and I said that I was going to bring a bill this year. The only big issue I have is that I did the inland ports, also worked on the iHubs. And when I look at the state revenue that could be lost, I think there needs to be a cap on this. What drove my concern was, since this bill was passed, I've heard rumors of a lot of different Good Life projects happening in Omaha. And many of the developers and DED, for that matter, don't understand necessarily the complexity, especially downtown. And what I mean by that is, if you do a Good Life district in downtown Omaha, you will have to be figuring out how that affects the turnback tax with Mecca, how it affects all those things. And that's in the Department of Revenue. DED is something different. They don't always talk. And so if they were to approve one in downtown Omaha, that could have significant effects on many of the programs, not just in Omaha, but statewide, who deal with the turnback tax. Then I started hearing more about other ones developing in Omaha in some key areas. And I'm concerned from a state's perspective. Now, if I was on the city council or the mayor, I'd probably feel different about this. But I'm concerned that if we take some of our highest sales tax generation areas, particularly in Omaha, the state can lose significant dollars. When this bill was passed, at least what I heard on the floor, this was about new development, not necessarily redevelopment. Those are two different things. But this is being talked about significantly in Douglas County about redevelopment. And I don't think that was the intention of the bill. And so looking at inland port and how we're trying to figure out how to do these, well, now I guess some are calling mega projects. I think we just got to figure out a cap. And so this bill limits Douglas County to 1 and then puts a cap on it as 5. I don't know if 5 is the right number. That's the number for the inland port. The iHubs, the bill introduced this year, the iHubs are capped at 4 in Douglas, well, CD2, 6 in CD1, and 6 in CD3. And the thought about iHubs, which are innovation districts, innovation areas, is a place like Valentine versus Ogallala versus Norfolk versus Nebraska City. They're not connected like in Omaha. So to have like 15 iHubs in Omaha makes no sense. So that's why the numbers are different, mainly because of geographic location. So I know that the League of Municipalities and some others might come and testify against the number. I'm telling you, I'm not stuck on the number. It's whatever this committee thinks that number should be. But for Douglas County, we can't afford to have 5 or 6 of these as a state. We produce significant sales tax revenue, and I don't think it should be used for redevelopment when the purpose of this bill was for development. I also added a couple things around shovel ready, that if you received shovel ready funds or economic recovery funds, except for if you are in an inland port, inside of Omaha, that area can't be considered a part of the Good Life District. And the thought of that is we already put money in it once, sometimes twice in some of these areas. I don't think we should do additional money to an area when they came to the legislature and said, this is all we need to get this project going. And now that they may have some soccer fields, baseball fields, or want to redevelop a retail area, they come and ask for additional sales tax dollars or get additional sales tax dollars. So in many of these projects, they could be doubling or tripling in state funding. And I just don't feel like if we already gave them grant money and it was to make this project successful, then they should have already done their due diligence. I mean, the state should have, to make sure those projects are already successful with the money we gave them. So I don't think they should double dip. So that's kind of the three parts of the bill. I am strong on the double dipping. I am strong on Omaha having one or two, if you can include the inland port, and then the rest of the state having 5, but I'm not strong on that number of 5. I just think we have to cap it from a state's perspective or require DED and Department of Revenue to somehow talk to make sure there isn't unintended consequences like it would be downtown with the turnback tax.
Thank you, Senator Wayne. Are there questions from the committee? Senator Cowell.
Thank you, Chair Linehan. So, okay, Senator Wayne, so if there's an inland port, there can be a Good Life District within the inland port and then also without?
So in Douglas County, there theoretically could be 2, and that's, to me, again, I'm going with new development. So the inland port is about new development, where it would be located. And looking at it, let's just say hypothetically, the airport's included. I think they have like 1 retail shop there. So I'm not sure it's going to generate a whole lot. But the idea, if there's more things that happen around the multi-purpose facility, that can be used for infrastructure. And part of it is I don't want to compete with Senator Lindstrom's bill on turnback tax. We're trying to keep the whole Mecca and everybody fighting about the turnback tax. So if it could be possible in the inland port, sure. But the bigger concern is downtown, midtown, and other areas that are thinking about using this for redevelopment.
Midtown? Excuse me. Thank you, Senator Cowell. Are there other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much. Are you going to stay to close?
Yes.
Okay. Are there proponents? Are there any proponents? Are there opponents? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Senator Linehan, members of the committee. My name is Lynn Rex, Lynnrex, representing the League of Nebraska Municipalities, and today also the United Cities of Sarpy County. The page is handing out a letter from the United Cities of Sarpy County, which of course has Bellevue, La Vista, Papillion, in addition, Springfield and Gretna. And so these folks are also in opposition to it. And to the extent that Senator Wayne is saying that his main concern is Douglas County, we understand he may have some concerns there. Our concern is page 3, line 20, that says no more than 5 Good Life districts may be created statewide. The concern is that there are cities all across the state of Nebraska and communities that are looking at this, and we think it would be important to let them have the opportunity as well. And as you may remember, and we'll be talking about it more with the next bill, it is not self-executing. They've got to file all the requirements with DED, and those are significant requirements, and make sure that they can meet all the bells and whistles of what this legislature put in place last year, which was very significant. And we strongly support the tool that you provided last year with passage of LB 727. We think it's going to be just amazing all across the state with some great things that can be done. So with that, we would just respectfully suggest that we don't have a concern necessarily about what Senator Wayne wants to do in terms of Douglas County. We've not heard from Douglas County or Omaha related to this, but we'll double check that. We are concerned though about only having 5 in the rest of the state. And as noted in this letter from the United Cities of Sarpy County, the concern is picking winners and losers or having that limitation of who gets there first. So with that, I'm happy to respond to any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Ms. Rex, questions, Senator Duncan.
Thank you, Chairman Hand. Thank you, Ms. Rex, for being here. So is this a philosophical objection, or are there actually other projects that are currently in the works that would exceed this 5 for the rest of the state?
Both. So basically, we just don't think that there should be a cap like this in terms of statewide, only having 5. We're aware of other communities in other parts of the state, including Western Nebraska, that are looking at this, that have not come forward yet. I was surprised reading the paper yesterday that there was a second one approved in the Omaha area, and Bellevue's also applying. And so thus far, there have been 2 approved. The Gretna project, which I think is going to be phenomenal. And I don't know anything about the other project in Omaha, so I can't really talk about that. But today, you're going to hear from the city of Grand Island that's looking at some great projects, some great things that will be happening there. And again, other cities that have come forward, but they don't want to be named at this time. So folks see the proposal that you put forth last year is incredibly important in terms of being able to put communities on the map and make some huge impacts for the state of Nebraska, not only generating more sales tax for the state of Nebraska, frankly, even though you're lowering your state sales tax rate, it ultimately will generate more sales tax for the state of Nebraska and do great things for the communities.
Thank you.
So it's philosophical, and it's also because there are other cities that are very interested.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Senator Dungan. Are there other questions from the committee? You do understand, or do you share the concern that Senator Wayne mentioned about having turnback tax, and then you've got, turnback tax, we're doing that in a lot of downtown Omaha. So do you understand his concern about having the turnback tax and then a good life district?
I think there's issues that I would think the Department of Economic Development would look at very carefully because what would be involved in that. And I understand his concern about, I think the terminology he used was double dipping perhaps. I understand that concern.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Are there other opponents? Are there any other opponents?
Good afternoon, Senator Linehan, members of the committee. I'm Laura McAloon. I am the city administrator for the city of Grand Island, so I am really appreciative of questions I've already heard today. I do not have any prepared remarks to hand to you because I didn't intend to testify on this bill. I intended to rely on the testimony of the league. But Grand Island does have plans and would like to take advantage of the Good Life District bill.
I'm sorry, can you spell your name?
I'm sorry, Laura, L-A-U-R-A, McAloon, M-C, capital A-L-O-O-N.
Thank you.
I made the drive today from Grand Island to come testify on another bill. And that drive for me, like for many of you, is etched in my brain from a child. I know that the mile marker between 384 and 385, we're going to crest the hill and we get to see this building. My siblings and I battled for that first right of sighting for many, many years. What I noticed, particularly today with the Good Life District bills, is that not much has changed west of 384. A lot has changed east of there. We are in opposition to the numerical limit of 5 on the Good Life districts because we don't think it's fair that everything happens in the eastern part of the state, to be frank. We have the opportunity, but we don't have the capacity that developers and cities have in Lincoln and Omaha and the larger population counties to get those applications together quickly, right? So we know that 2 have already been approved. That's 2 of the 5 statewide. We don't want to be cut out of an opportunity that you had the vision to put in front of us last year and that we are working hard on developing an application. We don't want to be cut out of that simply for a numerical limit. If this committee does find it necessary to recommend a limit, then my suggestion would be limit it to the population, the counties with populations greater than 100,000. Give us in central and east and western Nebraska the opportunity to take advantage of this. We already have a deadline of December 31st, and we have very significant parameters in the Good Life District application requirements already that we have to meet.
Okay, thank you very much for being here. Are there questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for being here. Are there other opponents? Any other opponents? Anyone wanting to testify in the neutral position? Thank you, Senator Wayne.
I'm just here to answer any question, find out I love the honor. I haven't dealt with Lynn Rex in a while, not being in urban affairs, but I just love it because if we were to put a cap on, let's say, 3% hard cap on property tax, they're against that. But they're definitely against us putting a cap on the state doing something. It's weird. Anyway, I'm just saying it's caps and caps and caps. But I think a cap is definitely necessary. I understand that we pass it and there's things that are going on. People have projects and maybe we can tweak it and give a deadline for all the projects to be in. But I do think from a state's perspective and a state revenue, especially as we talk about property tax relief and moving more to a sales tax, whether I agree with that or not, we can't cut ourselves underneath or cut our feet from underneath us already by giving all this money away, by cutting our sales tax in these good life districts. So we have to figure out a workable solution. And just so you all know, I do have a bill to be transparent with everybody here. I do have a bill, LB 235 on select file that I'm going to ask this committee to exec on this sooner than later so I could attach it to that bill and get something done with the good life this year.
Thank you, Senator Wayne. Senator Powell.
Thank you, Chair Linehan. I have a question about the students from another state who attend a Nebraska public or private university shall not be counted. What does that mean?
So let's just say in a world where, let's use Crete, so I don't pick on Omaha. If they do a good life district to meet their threshold requirement, they could literally just count the students from a different state.
Got it. So they should, okay.
That's kind of an unfair advantage. And if you think about Omaha, that's kind of an unfair advantage to hit that visitors requirement.
100%. But the way it's worded, shall not be counted as out-of-state residents.
Because the way the bill is written, out-of-state residents, you have to meet a certain threshold of number of people. Okay. And I'm saying, if you're going to school here, you shouldn't be counted, and nor should, particularly in Omaha, we should use that because that does put us in an unfair.
So basically, it's not be counted as residents. The out-of-state is just
for the purposes of the good life calculation.
Got it.
For the purposes of good life calculation.
Thank you, Senator Cal. There are other questions from the committee? Your main focus is making sure, well, let's take downtown Omaha. Between the civic, CHI, the new music venue, there's a whole bunch of it's turned back tax already. Not
Correct.
As much as you wanted.
Well, no, you cut it back some last year. Let's not bring up harsh memories on Valentine's Day.
But you had all of downtown.
I try to get all of downtown. But yeah, so if you try to meet this visitor requirement, there's certain places you're looking at. One is downtown. And if you do downtown, then you will definitely affect the turnback tax. And that's our grant funding programs. That's how people maintain things and how, Quest Center or now Mecca kind of function. So we need to be mindful of that.
Okay, got it.
And my other concern is Midtown. Crossroads to Exarban in that area with UNO right there. You could theoretically just bring in UNO to your good life district and you'll meet the requirements. And I don't think that's the intent, nor do I think that's fair to Western Nebraska.
Okay, any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you. And I will stay for yours, just because I think it's very interesting. I don't want to go back to judiciary.
Are there, okay, with that, we've got letters, yes. I'm sorry, one opponent, that's it? Okay, with that, we close the hearing on 12/28 and turn it over to Senator Gillern.
And we will open on Senator Linehan's LB 1403.
Oh, should we go back to Bostar? Do you want to go back first?
Sure.
Okay, I'm sorry. Let's go back. Yeah, we'll go back to Senator Bostar, even though it's late. LB 1158. That's okay.
Good afternoon, Chair Linehan and fellow members of the Revenue Committee. Apologies for the delay. The exec board over the noon hours hearing went, instead of an hour and a half, went 2.5 hours. So
That's not going to be this one, is it?
It wasn't my bill in exact,
Okay.
so for the record.
All right.
My name is Elliot Bostar, that's ELIOTBOSTR, and I represent Legislative District 29. Today, I am presenting Legislative Bill 1158. According to a recent national survey commissioned by the American Cancer Society, Cancer Action Network, and the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, nearly 7 in 10 U.S. adults say they receive medical bills they cannot afford. Many are forced to delay paying the bill, put the debt on a credit card, or challenge the bill. 74% of those with past or present medical debt have experienced negative impacts as a result. More than 4 in 10 delayed medical care to avoid going into debt, and 34% of Americans became more depressed and anxious due to their medical debt. LB 1158, the Medical Debt Relief Act, establishes a reliable and sustainable avenue for Nebraska to assist individuals on medical debt due to an injury or illness beyond their means to repay, offering a vital financial service for the people of Nebraska. When individuals face unexpected or chronic illnesses, they may incur insurmountable medical debt. Even those with insurance and savings can find themselves financially devastated by such circumstances. Despite insurance coverage, personal savings, and charitable aid from hospitals, many still struggle with significant medical debt. This often leads to delayed or denied access to essential care, exacerbating health issues, and increasing reliance on public programs like Medicaid for costly treatments. The Medical Debt Relief Act intervenes in this cycle. It authorizes the state treasurer to engage a medical debt relief coordinator, tasked with negotiating the purchase of outstanding debts from healthcare providers, typically at a fraction of their original value. This benefits hospitals by providing revenue they would otherwise forego and alleviates their financial burdens. For individuals, it means the coordinator will settle the debts on their behalf, offering life-changing relief to those grappling with serious illnesses and chronic conditions. Under the Act, the Medical Debt Relief Fund is created that can accept legislative appropriations, as well as philanthropic contributions from individuals and private entities. Contributions into the fund would be tax deductible, and debt relief would be considered tax exempt, preventing the relief from saddling the beneficiary with a significant unexpected tax burden. Thank you for your time this afternoon. Urge the committee to advance LB 1158 and be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Senator Bostar. Are there any questions from the committee? How does this not have a fiscal note? I mean, I can't read C below.
So we're not, because we're not putting any money in. So the way this is written right now is it would create the program, authorize the state treasurer to do this work, and create the fund. And the fund could receive appropriations in the future. I didn't bring a bill to appropriate, and it could receive private philanthropic dollars. So it doesn't have a fiscal note because we're not actually putting any money in from the state at this point. What I would like to do is I would like to create this, and I would like to go out and try to solicit some private philanthropic money to put into the fund, because this is a very efficient way of doing what a lot of philanthropies are already trying to do, which is to, relieve medical debt from Nebraskans, people in their community and whatnot. If we do it through this system, we can do a lot more with a lot less. And so at this point, all I'm trying to do is create the system and structure.
So instead of the hospitals turning it over to a credit company, what do we call those?
Yes.
Debt collectors.
Instead of that, the state, through the state treasurer's office, could buy up the debt. And what we see a lot of is basically buying it around 10 cents on the dollar. So it's a good deal. And at this point, I want to see if we can make some progress privately, but we just need the structure in order to make that happen and build those efficiencies. And in the future, if the state wants to put in money, the fund will be there and they can accept appropriations. Also, the reason we need the bill for this is because the contributions into the fund should be treated tax deductibly, because that's how we treat it right now if they're doing this kind of thing. And then anyone receiving the debt relief, not counting that as income, which could then create more debt problems.
Can we do that at both the state and federal level, though? Would the federal government consider it as income?
That's a good question. Let me look into that.
Okay. Are there other questions from the committee? Senator Von Gillern.
Thank you, Senator Linehan. Senator Bostar, the Looking at the fiscal note, second sentence, state treasurer would enter into a contract with a medical debt relief coordinator. Forgive me if I missed it in your testimony. There are firms out there that do this
Yes.
existing that they can contract with. Are these the same firms that you said would buy for 10 cents on the dollar?
Yeah, functionally, yes.
Okay.
That's what they would, other states have done this or programs like this actually very, very successfully. And they've, on behalf of the state, put in a lot of money. That's not what I'm asking Nebraska to do at this point in time. But yes, there are firms that are experienced in purchasing debt from medical, providers, service providers cheaply. And it's a good deal for the hospitals and clinics and physicians because generally what we're talking about is debt that they would get right now 0 cents on the dollar for. So that's why everyone's willing to extinguish the debt for under face value because it's really just a win-win. It's more than the hospital would get, and and the individual is not generally in a position to pay anyway.
So those firms would provide the structure to make this happen, but the other comments you were making would provide the funding, potentially philanthropic funding to
Right.
provide the
Yes.
dollars to make it happen.
Mhm.
Okay,
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Von Gillern. Senator Cal.
Thank you, Chair Linehan. So does this make the state essentially a debt collector? I mean, we're buying up that debt and then we own that debt?
We're not buying the debt, we're extinguishing the debt.
Okay.
So we're paying off the debt.
With money that is donated from philanthropy?
Right now, the fund would be able to accept appropriations from the state or private contributions.
Okay.
Since I'm not asking the state to make an appropriation at this point in time, the idea being that what I want to go do is I want to go talk to funds and foundations and nonprofits that do a lot of this and put a lot of resources into this already and see if they would be interested in putting the money in. I know from preliminary conversations, there is some interest here already, so.
So if they're already doing this, why would we intercede and put the state in the middle of this process?
Yeah, that's a great question. The answer is because right now, because we can go further with a dollar than they can. That's fundamentally the purpose of it. So if we can create this structure and we can bring on through the treasurer's office, these organizations that can do this and extinguish this debt, we can have the ability to negotiate at that kind of scale and scope, and we can extinguish more dollars of debt for fewer dollars of contributions than some philanthropist or nonprofit can just by trying to hand out money to relieve debt.
And so contributions to the fund will be tax deductible. So basically, is this a tax credit?
It's not a tax credit,
Okay.
no. So right now, if
Just thought I'd ask.
right now, if you were to give money to a foundation to relieve medical debt, that would be tax deductible.
Okay.
All we're doing is treating this the same way.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Cal. Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there proponents? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Chairperson Linehan and members of the Revenue Committee, my name is Julia Cowan, Juliakeown. I'm a registered nurse of almost 7 years and have over 18 years of direct care experience with underserved Nebraskans. I am here on behalf of the Nebraska Nurses Association, the NNA, speaking in support of LB 1158, a bill to adopt the Medical Debt Relief Act. The Nebraska Nurses Association would like to thank Senator Bostar for introducing this bill, as well as others this session focusing on housing, childcare, nutrition programs, and healthcare, of course. Polling in 2022 from the Kaiser Family Foundation showed that people with medical debt reported cutting spending on food, clothing, and other household items, spending down their savings to pay for medical bills, borrowing money from friends or family members, or taking on additional debts. The bills were often incurred during some unexpected, unbudgeted for event, like emergency room trips or an overnight hospital stay. Residents with these unpaid bills were more likely to go hungry, struggle to keep their housing, skip their medications for chronic illnesses, according to the report. Nearly half of those surveyed said the bills stopped them from buying basic necessities. The Medical Debt Relief Act could remove this burden from qualifying Nebraskans. Two clarifying questions that the NNA has for implementation of this particular act include, will funds be available equitably for both urban and rural facilities and residents in both of those places? And what will be the prioritization for distribution of funds? The Nebraska Nurses Association is the overarching organization for the more than 30,000 registered nurses in Nebraska. As Nebraska nurses, we believe that preventative measures can result in a longer and better quality of life and ultimately reduce lifetime healthcare costs. For these reasons, the NNA supports LB 1158 and asks the committee to advance the bill to general file.
Thank you very much. Are there questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Appreciate it. Other proponents? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, committee. Thank you for your time today. My name is Daniel B. Lancaster, Lancaster, same as the county in which we are currently located, no relationship. I'm here today as a proponent of LB 1158 because, as you've already heard from several other testifiers, there are a lot of people here in the state of Nebraska that are negatively impacted by medical debt. I am one of them. I am currently being sued by a debt collector located here in Lincoln, Nebraska, known as AR Solutions, for the grand total of $217. Now, that's a very small, petty amount of money. I could easily pay it if I wanted to, but there's a unique twist in my case. I don't actually owe the debt. I never did. This debt collector is suing me for money that I shouldn't have to pay because a doctor filed the wrong paperwork with an insurance company, gave them false information that the doctor knew was false. And as a result of that, this medical debt came into existence, was sold to this medical debt collector without my knowledge or consent. And now I'm being sued in court and have been fighting for over a year to prove that I don't owe this debt. I have extensive paperwork to prove I don't owe it. I've gone through many steps to try to contact this debt collector and explain to them, including making complaints with federal government agencies such as the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, a federal government agency. They contacted the debt collector on my behalf, showed them the paperwork, I didn't owe the debt. Debt collector's response is, we are going to continue suing Mr. Lancaster anyway. He will pay this debt one way or another. I am still going to be going to trial to fight this debt next week. I believe I will succeed at trial and prove that I did not owe this debt, but I'm testifying in favor of this legislation because I believe this would help people like me, people who get sued by these attack dog debt collectors for debts that some of us don't even really owe. And instead of having this option where we are being harassed essentially by the same doctors who once saw us as patients, we should have an alternate way to get this resolved, a non-confrontational way. If the state of Nebraska could step in and help us with getting these debts resolved another non-confrontational way, I think that's a win-win solution for everybody, except for probably the debt collectors. I'm okay with that part. So therefore, I support this legislation. I strongly encourage this committee to forward this legislation and to do everything you can to help citizens like me who are affected by this problem. Thank you for your time today, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lancaster. Are there questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Other proponents? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Chair Linehan, members of the Revenue Committee. My name is Eric Gerard. That's ERICGERRARD. And I am here today as a registered lobbyist on behalf of AARP Nebraska. I'm having a letter passed out from our state director, Todd Stubendick, that outlines many of the issues that relate to our aging population in the state. I did want to thank this committee for the numerous bills or steps you've taken for the aging population in the state over the course of the last 3-4 years. You've been really helpful to the aging population. We want to thank you for that. Senator Bostar laid out why this would be a good bill, why it's good for consumers to have options. I did just want to read through a few of these stats that are somewhat staggering. Going down to the third paragraph, or maybe it's second, a July 2022 Kaiser Health tracking poll shows that unexpected medical bills are near the top of the list of people's financial worries, with about 2/3 of us, of the public, saying they're at least somewhat worried about affording unexpected medical bills for themselves and their family. About 4 in 10 adults, that's 41%, report having debt due to medical bills, including debts owed to credit cards, collection agencies, families and friends, banks, and other lenders to pay for their healthcare costs. Additionally, about half of adults say they would be unable to pay an unexpected medical bill of $500 in full without going into debt. Growth in debt carried by older families headed by someone age 75 and older is particularly troubling. The percentage of families in this age category carrying debt more than doubled between 1989 and 2019. So it was at 25%, went up to 51%. I won't read the rest of it because there are some good stats in there. Just wanted to show there truly is a need, and especially for the aging population. So we thank Senator Bostar for bringing this bill forward and urge this committee to advance it to the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Are there other proponents? Are there any opponents? Anyone want to testify in the neutral position? Senator Bostar, would you like to close? Oh, and we'll look at letters. Letters, we had 3 proponents, no opponents, and 1 neutral.
Thank you, Chair Linehan and members of the Revenue Committee. My objective here is to try to get this thing created, raise a little bit of money to put into it, and see how it works. See what sort of efficiency we can get out of trying to help people. The legislation already prioritizes lower income folks with particularly burdensome debt, so as defined as making up 5% or more of their annual income, as well as, related to under 400% of the poverty level. So we have some of those prioritizations in there. I would be absolutely fine with putting in provisions to say that the distributions should be, done evenly by congressional district or something. That way we're making sure that we're getting folks all across the state beneficially impacted by this. So that's my ask of the committee is just help me get this created. We'll try to get some money put into it privately, see how it works, and then go from there. Thank you.
Just
Senator
quickly, you talked about the 3 congressional districts. How would you envision publicizing that so people knew about my district?
The availability of
the mediator.
So really it wouldn't, this is also why this is useful, is by having a statewide system in place. It'll mostly be done through the hospitals and healthcare providers and rely on less of having individuals that are in a tough situation getting connected with the right kind of donor.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you, Senator Meyer. Are there other questions from the committee? Seeing none?
Thank you.
Closes the hearing. And now we'll go to, turn it over.
All right, we'll open legislative bill 1403 and welcome Senator Linehan. NACO payment, seriously? What'd I say? Oh, we'll open on 1374. How's that?
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Von Gillern and members of the Revenue Committee. I'm Lou Ann Linehan, LOUANN LINEHAN, and I'm Legislative District 39, which is Elkhorn and Waterloo. This afternoon, I am introducing LB 1374, which builds on what our committee did with LB 692 last year as amended into LB 727. As a reminder, last year we recognized that to grow our tax base, we needed to bring new sales tax revenue to our state through increased destination tourism, attracting out-of-state visitors and new to market retail, and providing new options for shopping, dining, and entertainment. To accomplish this, we authorized something new, Good Life districts. under LB 692 and LB 727. If you can prove to the Department of Economic Development that you are able to bring transformational project to the state, one that meets significant investment thresholds and attracts a significant percentage of visitors and sales from out of the state, then the state will assist the project by reducing the state sales tax rate in half to 2.75%. Our novel idea from last year has been met with great enthusiasm across the state. Before us today is LB 1374, which builds on the foundation laid by LB 692 and ensures that the game-changing projects being proposed for the Good Life districts can come to fruition and benefit Nebraska for decades to come. In a nutshell, the vast majority of LB 1374 is setting up the framework for cities to use economic development programs to fill the gap left by the reduced sales tax rate and partner with Good Life district applicants to finance the project with tax revenues collected within the district. In fact, the language and concepts are very similar to the Local Option Municipal Economic Development Act, commonly known as LB 840. That program and LB 1374 are constitutionally permissible under Article 3, Section 2 of our state constitution. Another section of LB 1374 make tweaks to the parameters of the Good Life districts, including extending the length and size of the districts and allowing for boundaries of the district to change over time. I have also prepared an amendment, which we've distributed to the bill, that makes additional changes to address some of the preliminary feedback we have heard on the bill. Importantly, the amendment makes sure that we aren't giving away our sales tax base to property owners unaffiliated with the Good Life districts. This amendment also makes sure that the Good Life designation doesn't prevent another property owner from developing their own property within the district. Further, because some of these projects will generate substantial new tax revenue for the cities, the amendment also restricts the local option sales tax authority within the Good Life districts to make sure the cities are being good partners with the Good Life districts. If we, as I say, gave up some of the state tax base to generate these projects, it's only fair for the city to do the same. The idea in both cases is that we are better off with a project with a lower sales tax rate than we are with the regular sales tax rate and no project. Finally, the amendment also sets up the potential with the Department of Economic Development approval of the state sales tax going back up a small amount in the district, but only to finance some very exciting U.S. Olympic and professional sports opportunities you will hear about from the testifiers behind me. I'll conclude by saying that the scale, the ambition, incredible impact of these projects is exactly what we wanted from last year's bill, and is why I introduced 1374. I believe that you may hear from some opponents to the introduced version of this today, which is normal. What I can promise you is that we will hear them out, and we'll make sure that we get the parties together after this hearing to figure out a bill that will actually deliver game-changing projects, but also a bill that's fiscally responsible, fair, and meets the constitutional scrutiny. Good Life districts in this bill are too important to the future of state not to figure that out. We can get this done, and we will get this done. Thank you for consideration. I appreciate your support for 1374, and I'm happy to answer any questions from the committee.
Thank you, Senator Linehan. Any questions from the committee members? Seeing none. Thank you. We will look up the first proponent testifier. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Senator Van Gillern and Revenue Committee. I appreciate the opportunity to offer my support for LB 1374. My name is Rodney Yates. I'm the owner-operator of Nebraska Crossing. My name is spelled R-O-D-N-E-Y, Yates, Y-A-T-E-S. My objective today is to give you an update on where we are on the progress we've made on the bill since it was passed 6 months ago. It's been a busy 6 months for us, and I think we've made tremendous progress in delivering the goals of the bill, which is a lot of tourism, a lot of new to market industry, and I think you're going to be very pleased with what we share today. So once the bill passed back in June, was signed into law by Governor Pillen, my first call was to John Cook. And Coach Cook has unbelievable worldwide global connections. And I talked to Coach Cook about, hey, John, how do we relocate USA Olympic volleyball to Gretna? And John had some great relationships. He put us in contact with the CEO, Jamie Davis of USA Olympic Volleyball. And we are in the final stages putting together an agreement to relocate them from Anaheim, California. It's going to be about $150 to $200 million facility. They're going to relocate 100 Olympic athletes. You're going to see all their corporate staff, their training staff relocate to Gretna and be a big part of our community. So the second call I made after I talked to John was I called Ernie Goss, who is the chair of the economic department at Creighton University, a phenomenal asset for the state of Nebraska to have him teaching and helping on projects like ours here in the Good Life District. But I asked Ernie, I gave him our vision, and I asked him, put some numbers, some math behind what this all looks like. So we shared our vision, Johanna Boston and I did, and Ernie came back and said, you're going to draw 16 to 18 million tourists a year. You're going to drive 2.2 billion in annual retail sales. You're going to create 40,000 full-time jobs, 18,000 full-time residents in this district. And I was kind of wowed by those numbers. And I said, well, Ernie, we're going to create the modern day version of Mall of America. That's what the potential is with our district here. So then the second thing I asked Ernie, I said, Ernie, we've got the Huskers. They're kind of our equivalent of NFL football. We've got the Blue Jays. They're our equivalent of NBA basketball. How do we look at pro sports? So Ernie put together a phenomenal, he and I worked on it, but a phenomenal economic impact study for the NHL. So there's been a lot of noise about the commissioner, Gary Bettman, over the last couple of weeks. And Ernie ranked all the existing franchises and all the proposed expansion franchises. We came out number 1 and number 2 in every category. So we shared that with Mr. Bettman, and Mr. Bettman invited us this Friday to come to New York with our team and present the opportunity to be in the Good Life District. So phenomenal opportunities in a very, very short period of time. Johanna Boston will talk about some of the new to market retail we're bringing, some of the new industries we're bringing, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from the committee members? Yes, Senator Duncan.
Thank you, Vice Chair Von Gillern. Thank you for being here, Mr. Yates.
Thank you.
You might remember when you were here last year, I was particularly excited about IKEA.
Yes.
Are we any closer to getting an IKEA in Nebraska?
Yes, we've negotiated a term sheet with IKEA.
Outstanding. Thank
Yes.
you.
You're welcome.
Other questions from committee members? I'm sorry, you flinched. Mr. Yates, can you
Yes.
tell me where you are with land acquisition or control over land in order to do all the things that you're talking about?
Yeah, the key for us now is to close our construction loan. So we're working on a $3 billion construction loan. And once this amendment passes, we'll be able to proceed on closing on all the land around the mall. So I felt like it was premature to start closing on. We've done some closings already. We've had a number of the landowners reach out to us about participating in the Good Life District and having us buy their land. So I feel very bullish on that. But once we pass this bill, close our construction loan, we can start closing this summer.
So as I recall, the Good Life District requirement is 2,000 acres.
Yes.
Is that correct? So if you take out the existing land that the mall is sitting on right now, how much land do you have control over beyond?
I'd say roughly 10%.
10% of?
The land of the overall district. So we're 2,000 acres, roughly 200 acres.
Okay, all right. But you're obviously, with all the plans you're talking about, you're obviously in progress of conversations or
Yes.
discussions.
Yeah, but
with
one
the
thing.
balance of land?
Yes, Senator. I think one of the things we tried to do is be really strategic about the process. So we hired a third-party appraiser to reach out to all the homeowners, offer to spend time with them, interact with them, get their sense for values and all that. So that'll be completed next week. And we wanted to just have a professional process and make sure we treated every landowner professionally and as accurately as we can to land values.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You bet.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Next proponent testifier, please.
I'm John Cook. I'm the head volleyball coach at Nebraska. Honor and privilege to be here. I'll spell my name Johnncook. And I'd just like to talk a little bit about how all this has evolved. As Rod said, USA Volleyball, we made the call. We got them out here. They came to the stadium match with several players and coaches and just fell in love with Nebraska. And of course, Jordan Larson, who is really the leader of USA Women right now, she's pretty fired up about this opportunity to move USA here. And I've been involved off and on. I actually coached with USA men way back in the 90s. Their facilities in California are abysmal. They don't have places to live. This would be a one-stop place where they could buy houses, they could live there. Anyway, this is to me, it's just a beautiful opportunity for a USA program. And volleyball, as you know, is pretty big now, and it's getting bigger. And so that's one thing that, is really, really exciting about this. The second thing is I want you to envision, because I want to share a little bit about my world. So this weekend, I'm going to go to Kansas City. I want you to picture the convention center. I want you to picture 100 volleyball courts. They're going to be playing from 8 in the morning till 10 at night. Just every 45 minutes, a new team comes on these courts. The same thing is going to be going on in the CHI Center. This is where I go to recruit. There's going to be 60 courts there, and then there'll be another facility in just west Omaha. They'll have about another 15 courts in there. That's how many kids are going to be playing. And one of the things that Rod is talking about, and excited me the most, because my kids went through this as well, we could be hosting those tournaments at the Good Life facility, because there's going to be youth sports there, gyms, and so on. And the beautiful thing is everybody can come in. The parents have things to do. They can go Top Golf. They have fun things to play with. They can go to restaurants. They have places to stay. So it's kind of a one-stop for a club tournament. And that's how big these things are getting right now. And just think of all the missed revenue we're missing out on not having those people come here. And so all the Nebraska teams, a lot of them will be in Kansas City, and there'll be other teams from other states coming to Omaha. So this goes on about every other weekend all over the country. This is how big they are. And this would be a great opportunity to be able to host those events in Nebraska. And just the other thing that I want to say is, when I first looked at this, I'm like, wow, this is crazy for Nebraska. But after what's happened this past year, and we've seen filling up a stadium, we're seeing what's happening. We just had a head coaches meeting today, and Trev talked about our brand for Nebraska. We just had the most watched volleyball match ever in the history of TV. Women's basketball just had the most watched for a regular season Big Ten game. I mean, Nebraska is on fire right now, and we are in the national spotlight. Our men's basketball is doing great things. Got to get football going, but that's going to happen. You watch.
It's probably a good point to wrap it.
But look what happened. But you got Dylan Raiola coming back here and punting Georgia. I mean, right there, that's huge national news. So I just think things are building here, and it's really cool. Of course, Creighton's doing great things, and for the first time ever, we had 3 Division I teams in the NCAA women's volleyball tournament. It's never happened before. So I just hope this can happen, because the location's great. They have a Tacova there too, besides IKEA, and REI. So anyway, I'll take any questions, and it's an honor and privilege to be here, to be able to share and be a part of all this, because it's really exciting. And, people, again, I recruit, and these kids come in thinking Nebraska is just a cornfield, and they come here and see what we have now. Same with USA. None of those kids wanted to come here like Nebraska. We're not going there. They came here and saw all this and got the tour up there, and they're sold. They're ready to move here, move their families here, and be a part of, Nebraska. So
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from the committee members? Senator Albright.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being an inspiration to the young ladies that are out there wanting to play. I'll be spending my weekend at CHI and then going over to Elkhorn to watch one age group and then the other.
There you go.
All weekend.
Yep.
But I really think you should be considering also an appropriations bill next year to put an indoor facility for your volleyball so that more of us can come watch.
Okay.
Excellent idea. But thanks for being a part of this, because it really does make a difference in Nebraska when somebody like yourself, comes to promote it, because this is really something that is happening. I've been going out of town, out of state a long time, but we need to bring the money back here to Nebraska.
You're right.
So thank you.
So you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
And again, to me, this is going to change Nebraska. And
And I hope you don't mind, but I took a picture of you to send it to my granddaughter.
It's okay.
This doesn't happen in education in revenue very often, so.
Thank you. Any other questions from Starstruck committee members? Thanks so much for being here today.
Okay.
Thanks for all that
All
you've
right.
done.
Good luck
for
with
us
all
today.
this. Thanks.
Thank you. Next proponent testifier.
Thank you very much, Vice Chairman Von Gillern, members of the Revenue Committee. My name is Carter Teal. I am the Policy and Research Coordinator for the Lincoln Independent Business Association. That's CARTERTHIELE. I'm here to express LIBA's unequivocal support for LB 1374, the Good Life District Economic Development Act. This act would allow Lincoln and cities across the state to begin taking advantage of the business-friendly, beneficial components of the Good Life. Simply, it is a game changer for the city of Lincoln and the state of Nebraska. I'm going to skip ahead here because the main point is the city of Lincoln has a strong track record of using taxable increment financing to stimulate new economic development projects. LB 1374 takes this successful approach and amplifies it, effectively putting TIF on steroids. This would allow us to undertake larger, more impactful projects that will transform the city's economic landscape. Specifically, this bill could provide the financing for all of the commercial development from East Lincoln to the soon-to-be constructed East Beltway. Another commendable feature of LB 1374 is the requirement for a majority voter approval for the establishment and conditions of the Good Life districts. This requirement ensures that the voices of Lincoln residents and Nebraskans are heard and that these districts truly serve the interests of the communities they are a part of. This democratic approach to economic development is a testament to the inclusive spirit of this act. We are excited about the potential of LB 1374 to drive the growth of the city of Lincoln and the state of Nebraska. With responsible oversight, this act, with its innovative approach to economic development, will be a powerful tool for transforming our city and state into a hub of rapidly expanding economic activity. We look forward to working with you as well to implement this act for the benefit of Lincoln and all Nebraskans. Thank you, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from committee members? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Teal.
Thank you.
Next proponent.
Good afternoon. Vice Chairman Von Gillern, esteemed members at the committee, thank you for affording me the opportunity to speak and address you this afternoon. I sit here before you in support of LB 1374. My name is Johanna Boston, spelled Johanna Boston, like the city. I serve as Chief Strategy Officer of Nebraska Crossing, and I'm the co-founder of Just Data, our tech arm. My focus lies on the development and implementation of our fintech and marketing strategies. Today, I wish to highlight the groundbreaking fintech platform at the Good Life District in Nebraska Crossing in Gretna. We have pioneered the first patented ecosystem cashback mobile application that has changed the landscape of customer acquisition and retention, bringing people in from out of state, understanding who they are, their consumer behaviors, seeing their transactions and utilizing it as a leasing tool to bring in new to market industries into the state. Since the passage of LB 727, we have been granted our 6 patents. We have onboarded over 2 million customers into our ecosystem, leveraging their preferences to attract new to market retail, like some of the retail mentioned today and some that we can't. And we meticulously track consumer behavior, both inside and outside of the district, so we understand who is coming in from out of state, how often they're coming, et cetera. And it just enables us to understand those consumer trends. We're just not conduits of retail, we're architects of new industry. And I just want to highlight that we are constructing 2 million square feet of fintech campus. We are actively negotiating out-of-state fintech relocations for corporations, one potential in Pasadena, California, that's underway in negotiations already. Our initiatives are projected to create over 40,000 new jobs, including high-paying positions in fintech, effectively counteracting some of the brain drain that everybody has been reading about lately, especially. Consumers within our mall and soon-to-be district earn and redeem cashback rewards exclusively within the ecosystem, fostering that loyalty to keep them coming back, creating sticky customers. In essence, customers that shop in our mall and the district will earn cashback rewards that will keep them coming back to Nebraska again and again. I'm prepared to answer, hopefully, any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony today. Next proponent testimony, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Jake Farrant, spelled Farrant. I own a business in Kansas called Mammoth Sports Construction. For the last 3 years running, we've been one of the largest installers of synthetic turf, but also we build indoor facilities as well. I'm coming here today to more speak to what sports tourism is doing across our country, and especially here in the Midwest, as I have hands-on experience from day to day with sports tourism and the facilities that have been being built around the country, and specifically the ones that we've built, and then the interaction with the community for the years after they are being built. So as a proponent of this bill, and I've had some involvement in what the district is in the plans, in the architect's plans, this would, without a hesitation, would become the new front porch, the new front door for the state of Nebraska, as youth sports drives more tourism and more people through your door than, well, if I was in Oklahoma City yesterday, I said Nebraska Furniture Mart. I can't say that here, but it will drive millions of people through your community, and the amount of spending that goes on, depending on who you subscribe to, is in the billions. So the construction of the project is exciting. I can answer to what I believe Omaha and Lincoln is compared to the rest of the Midwest, or I can continue to just talk about tourism in general. But and I'm also okay if you take my picture as well. It's,
Get him, Jenny.
But you know, we have contracts with 5 NFL teams, and we've been in the last 3 years have worked in over 40 states, and we're very honored to be asked to testify here about the positive impacts of what this could be for the state of Nebraska. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Next proponent. Are there any other proponents? Seeing none, any opponent testimony? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Vice Chairperson Von Gillern, members of the Revenue Committee. My name is Mike Rogers, Mikerogers, and I'm a bond attorney at Gilmore & Bell in Omaha. Our firm represents many cities around the state of Nebraska, including several with proposed Good Life districts. We were engaged by our client, the city of Gretna, to draft this legislation, but I'm unfortunately here to testify in opposition to LB 1374. Last year's Good Life District legislation and this bill are powerful tax incentive efforts aimed at spurring economic development in Nebraska. The central feature of this bill utilizes the economic development provisions in Article 13, Section 2 of the Nebraska Constitution to allow sales taxes to be used to pay for privately owned property. 2 critically damaging provisions were added to LB 1374 before it was introduced that renders it constitutionally problematic and non-functional as a financing tool. The most significant constitutional problem involves one or more provisions that would give the developer applicant authority to independently change boundaries of a Good Life District or change which properties are subject to different sales tax rates within the Good Life District. Any provision that directly or indirectly gives authority to a private citizen to change taxing powers would constitute an improper delegation of taxing authority and raise due process concerns, since there is no mechanism for a disinterested decision maker to evaluate objective criteria after hearing from affected property owners in violation of both state and federal constitutions. The United States Supreme Court has described delegating central governmental functions to private parties to be imposed on the unwilling minority as legislative delegation in its most obnoxious form, because it is not delegation to an official or official body who are disinterested and making determinations on objective criteria, but it is delegated to private persons whose interests may be and are often adverse to the interests of others in the same business. Most of the proposed amendments which have been suggested since this bill's introduction were variations of the same idea, effectively giving a private developer decision-making authority over taxing rates on the unwilling minority without any real ability for those affected to participate in the process. These provisions designed to either control property rights or taxing rates are aimed at giving a private developer the tools of state government to control real estate and real estate development rather than relying on our system of free market capitalism. These efforts will almost always result in constitutional due process issues as they go against the very foundational principles that give private landowners freedom to enjoy their property rights with predictable taxing rates and access to disinterested decision makers evaluating objective criteria when those rights are affected. And I see I'm out of time.
Yeah, thank you for honoring that. Any questions from the committee members? Senator Albrecht.
Thank you, Vice Chair Von Gillern. Thank you for being here. Just kind of burst our balloon here.
Well, I had some positive things to say next.
You know, I'd like for you to continue.
Thank you, Senator. Removing these relatively short offending provisions from the bill and advancing LB 1374 without them will greatly benefit each community where a Good Life District is established and will provide a critical funding mechanism to help the state see a return on its investment in each Good Life District. Without it, without LB 1374 in a stripped of those problematic provisions, the pace of development will be slow and the state will see significantly fewer benefits from the sales tax it has already agreed to give up.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. Are you aware of these other sports complexes that have gone up around the city of Omaha or plan to? Are you reading the papers and?
Generally, yes.
And a lot of them ask for the sales tax dollars so that they can get up and running and.
Yes, I'm aware of.
600. So is that illegal in your mind as well?
It depends on how those are structured. And this, the Sports Arena Facilities Financing Construction Act is a different arrangement, which would provide turnback tax, the 70% of the state's sales tax collected within 600 yards of those facilities for sports complexes and also arenas. Ralston Arena was the first one to use that. Those mechanisms are legal when they go to pay for publicly owned complexes or buildings like Ralston Arena was. Also, the city of Kearney voted bonds to build a sports complex using that same provision. This bill is different, and it was structured to allow tax dollars to go pay for privately owned property, which is critical for the types of projects that are envisioned in Gretna and elsewhere. And this bill uses the constitutional exception, which allows for tax dollars to go to pay for privately owned property. And there are two relatively minor requirements for that. One, it needs to be a city economic development program. And two, it needs voter approval. As the gentleman from LIBA pointed out, it's a good thing to have voters weigh in on it. And this program, and that's the reason why it would call for voter approvals, because the Constitution requires it before public tax dollars can go to pay for privately owned property like this.
So they would have to engage with the Gretna city in some way rather than the state of Nebraska?
Correct, yeah.
Going into an agreement, it would not supersede what a city would do.
I'm sorry.
Like you're saying that the state cannot do this. We cannot give up
Correct.
the sales tax dollars.
The state can, the way this program was drafted and established, it works perfectly well by replacing the state sales tax with a new 2 3/4% sales tax imposed within this Good Life District inside the city limits. And then that's utilized to pay for private development, public development. It can be used to pay for debt service on bonds issued. And in addition to that type of funding mechanism, tax dollars from the state can also be used in these economic development programs. The Constitution permits local sources of revenue as well as state tax dollars to be deposited to an economic development program like this. So yeah, that would be permissible.
And so this amendment came from?
Oh, that's right. I handed an amendment out. This very short amendment would fix the constitutional issues. There are only 2 offending provisions. It's not a very long amendment because this would effectively revert the bill back to the original draft that I had prepared, to remove one provision, which would require an exclusive contract with the developer. That makes it less of a city economic development program and more of the developer's economic development program. And it would also raise regulatory taking issues because the way the bill was introduced, that type of provision could be used as a veto power over development of property not owned by the applicant in this geographic area. So that's one correction. The other one would remove the ability of the applicant to effectively control which properties are in or out of the Good Life District after it's been approved. And that's the main problem with the provision as introduced. And I don't know what's in the amendment, but my guess is there are provisions in the amendment that would effectively, now perhaps a state agency is involved, but the decision of whether or not a property is in or out of the Good Life District, or whether or not a piece of property has the same taxing rates or is subject to the same sales tax, state or local combination. The proposals that have come up so far before the hearing were centered all of those decisions in the applicant's hands. And that's a due process problem because there's no ability for the negatively affected landowners to weigh in. So the amendment would clear that away and allow for a district to be, the size to be increased. Another provision in here is allowing a 3,000 acre Good Life District instead of a 2,000 acre Good Life District. And so it would call for the original applicant to submit the same types of materials they submitted when the original Good Life District was established and increase the size if it makes sense under the criteria that DED evaluates. The thing that's being removed is any ability for a private person, resident, not a governmental entity, to determine which landowners are subject to which sales tax rates, whether they're inside the Good Life District or out, or if they're all in the Good Life District and some get the lower state sales tax rate and some don't. Those types of determinations are reserved for our governmental entities in this country because if our own property rights are affected, we want some ability to go to whatever the tribunal is, a city council, the legislature, to say, hey, this isn't fair. We want it to be different because we don't want our property rights affected this way. Those decisions are under the due process concept are made after objective criteria are evaluated by an independent tribunal and a decision is rendered. And that kind of structure could work as well, but that's not what's in the original bill and not something that's been offered by the proponent so far.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Senator Cal.
Thank you, Vice Chair Von Gillern. So, Mr. Rogers, if this isn't fixed, do you see this as something that is going to stimulate some lawsuits and a whole bunch of stuff that will slow down the process in general?
Well, I'm not a litigator, so I try to avoid litigation as much as possible, but I would not be surprised if it would cause some lawsuits. I'm a bond lawyer, so my job is to help figure out how financings work and financings that are reliable. Some of the problems in here would stop financings from happening. Cities would say, well, geez, we don't want to pursue something like this and end up in a situation where we invite lawsuits from disaffected landowners who are not given the ability to weigh in like they should.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Rogers, just a couple of questions. So with the two changes that you propose in the amendment, would that change your clients from being an opponent to a proponent?
It would, yes. My clients would be fully supportive and are fully supportive of all but maybe 3/4 of a page of this bill, and would fully support this legislation. And I expect the rest of the opponents will be in the same position.
And you can answer this question, or those behind you can answer it. Have there been conversations between your client and the proponents about these changes?
Yes, there have been.
And non-productive conversations, or again, you don't have to answer that, but.
Well, we have it. We don't have an amendment that has been agreed to.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. Seeing no other questions, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Next opponent.
Senator Von Gillern, members of the committee, my name is Lynn Rex, Lynn-Rex, representing the League of Nebraska Municipalities. We're here in opposition to this bill simply because of the constitutional issues. Otherwise, once those are adopted, hopefully by this committee, we will be strongly supporting this proposal. 692, as I said before, has incorporated into LB 727 last year and passed by the legislature, is a phenomenal opportunity for Nebraska and for communities all across the state. Mike Rogers has gone through and outlined the constitutional issues. His JD is a whole lot more valuable than mine, so I will not do that, other than to say that I just think, first of all, Rod Yates, wow, very visionary, some great things that are going to happen in Gretna. I'm handing out also a letter of opposition from the 5 cities of Sarpy County, again, only because of the constitutional issues. But the great news is we provided for you amendments, which we strongly support, which will clarify and correct the constitutional issues. And in fact, the league has got quite a bit of skin in the game when it comes to the whole premise of this bill, in the sense that some of you are from communities that have LB 840 programs. That was based on the constitutional amendment that the league put forward, the legislature placed before the voters in 1990. It passed overwhelmingly. That is to Article 13, Section 2, which says that the legislature may authorize cities and villages to use local sources of revenue for economic or industrial projects or programs subject to a vote of the people. There was amended subsequently to have other elements of state funds and donations and other things which came into play. That's all because of a constitutional prohibition in Article 13, Section 3 against the prohibition against lending the credit of the state. And so we've got a number of municipalities across the state that have had elections with the vote of the people. They put in LB 840 programs. It's just been great, but this just takes it to a whole new level. And the premise of this makes it constitutional, makes it doable. The bill that you passed last year, we cannot thank you enough for that, because that is a strong foundation on what's happening now in Gretna, what will be happening in other cities. But we just implore you to make it constitutional so that there'll be no issues in terms of how the bill can be implemented. And with that, I'm happy to respond to any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Senator Albright.
Thank you. Is the land that they're talking about here, is it annexed into the city, or is it still county ground? Do you know?
I'll defer to maybe Senator Linehan in closing. My understanding is it is not, no, I don't believe Gretna has annexed the land in yet. So the answer, I think, is no, but I would obviously defer to Senator Linehan in closing with her client. But again, I want to emphasize too, these 5 cities in Sarpy County will strongly support this with these amendments. And the league does on behalf of municipalities all across the state of Nebraska.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you for your consideration.
Yeah. Next opponent. Jacqueline.
Good afternoon again. Laura McAloon, Laura MC, capital ALOON. I'm testifying on behalf of the city of Grand Island, where I serve as the city administrator. Based on the text of LB 1374 as introduced, the city is testifying in opposition to the bill. We do this despite the fact that we worked closely with our bond counsel, Mike Rogers, and with the city of Gretna on the original drafting of the bill in order to facilitate our need for local control, a uniform local source of sales tax to take advantage of the capacity that the legislature and Senator Linehan had the great foresight to create with the idea of a Good Life District. The Good Life District is a wonderful idea that we want to take advantage of. It creates capacity for an additional local tax. But our city council and our citizens, we've been an LB 840 city for, we're in our third 10-year renewal. That renewal passed last year with, I think 78% of voters support, 77, 78%. So we know our voters support local option sales taxes when they see the benefit of the project. What we are envisioning for the city of Grand Island is a complete and total reinvigoration and transformation of the South Locust Corridor from Interstate 80 into downtown, past the Nebraska State Fairgrounds, and our own Heartland Event Center, and into our Railside District and our very newly formed 4th Street Business Improvement District, which, if you have not tried the Cuban food, the Vietnamese food, the African food, that lives on 4th Street in Grand Island, you need to stop by and visit and do that. The city council last fall on Halloween closed on the purchase of Camp Augustine. If you were a Boy Scout in the state of Nebraska, you may have gone there and camped, but we spent just under $2 million to acquire approximately 156 acres right at the intersection with Interstate 80 on South Locust, adjacent to the state recreation area of Mormon Island. And we have big plans and visions for a significant central Nebraska tourism facility that will attract visitors from all over the country and will actually pull people off of the interstate into the core of Grand Island, visiting our wonderful stores and retail facilities and taking advantage of our tourism activities that are located on Fauna Park. Without the unconstitutional language that our bond counsel pointed out, we would be 100% behind this bill. We want this bill to happen. We want a local option sales tax authority. So we'd ask you to support the amendment that he presented and give us the opportunity to use the tool.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony today. Next, opponent testimony. Afternoon.
Hello, Drew Snyder, Woodsonia Real Estate is the name of our company. We're based in Omaha. I spell my name DREWSNYDER. I'm here in opposition to LB 1374 as drafted, but again, similar to the other opponents, I'm supportive of the concept with the amended language that's been suggested. Really, my role is unique. I'll let these handouts get handed out to everyone. But I'm here really in two capacities or two roles. I'm actually a Good Life applicant in the city of Grand Island. We have our firm has a proposed project that has a pending application with the state of Nebraska. And so I'll let these get handed out, but this would be this handout right here. This is a project called Veterans Village. It's a little under 400 acres. The district itself is about 875 acres. And so I'm here in the capacity of being an applicant with a pending Good Life application with the state of Nebraska. I'm also here in the secondary role. And the second handout is a map of the approved, this is actually the approved district boundaries for Gretna. And I believe I may be the largest landowner in this district. I own parcel 9, and then I own the southern portion of parcel 8. So I'm certainly a stakeholder and have a very much vested interest in the Gretna Good Life District. And as previously mentioned, extremely supportive of what's happening out here, and would love to see the kind of activity that's being discussed move forward and happen. So really, I can answer questions as it relates to this, but I want to just talk a little bit about why, from my perspective as an applicant and then both as a landowner, we're opposing the proposed draft of the bill. The giving the applicant exclusive developer rights, obviously in Grand Island, that would be very beneficial for us. In Gretna, for a project of this size and scale, 2,000 acres, typical of large master plan developments like this, there would be multiple developers within a district or a project of this size, especially if it's going to be developed with any kind of speed or urgency. And so that would be one of the reasons that I think not giving the applicant the exclusive developer rights, but allowing multiple developers to operate within a district, I think makes it more successful. Also not supportive of allowing an applicant to unilaterally modify the district boundary. I'll explain that. Really, I think it's more for
If I
financing.
could get you to wrap up your testimony, and then we'll see if there's any, you're out of time,
Okay,
see if there's
sure.
any questions.
So again, just here, can answer any questions as a landowner in the Gretna district that's been approved, and then as an applicant in Grand Island. So just here kind of in a dual role, and want to just mention that opposing but supportive with the amended language that's been handed out.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? Senator Albright.
Thank you, Vice Chair Von Gillern. And thanks for being here. Are both of these in Grand Island proposals of what you want this to look like?
Yes, this would be the district boundary that's been proposed in our application.
And have you gone through the application process with like the city, and is this zoned in the city, both of these, and not in the counties?
Believe Laura could probably answer that better than I can. The veterans land, I believe, is in the city. And then obviously all of the retail on 281 is in the city.
Is in the city.
Yes.
Okay. And what is the time frame on your project in Grand Island? Or this is Columbus or Grand Island?
That's Grand Island. We had actually met with DED, who's administering the program last week. If approved, we could move forward this summer.
Okay.
So quickly.
And when it comes to the tax base, are you asking for any of that to help with this facility, these facilities?
Tax base is in
Like
which,
asking for a kickback on or just to keep the taxes, a portion of the taxes to build this out?
the problem with the Good Life, as mentioned now, is last year's legislative session reduced the state sales tax in half. We need a mechanism to basically fill the gap, to create a funding mechanism, to go monetize, to create money, to build out the project. And so we would either use an occupation tax or we would use this LB 1374. So it's providing another funding mechanism, which is much needed to provide financing for these type of projects.
Okay.
Right now, all that's really happened, and really essentially in Gretna, all that's happened at this point is the state sales tax has been cut in half. But how the applicant, developer, what have you, replaces that is what I think is essential on 1374. It provides a replacement tool to create a funding source to go out and monetize and create financing. I don't know if that makes sense, but.
Is there anything else you wanted to add before you were cut off? Is my other question.
No, I don't think so. I just very much have a vested interest in Gretna, and again, similar in opposition as drafted, but would be very supportive with the changes that Mike Rogers handed out.
Very good, thanks.
Other questions from the committee? Yes, Senator.
The proposal there in Grand Island, is that a multi-purpose basketball arena planned there, or is there a particular
It's a sports related, sports themed project that's tournament focused. I think the initial intent or the intent of the Good Life bill as drafted last year is to bring tourism visitation from out of state. So we've worked with the largest sports facility group in the country called Sports Facilities Companies out of Florida. They've helped us design a facility that is tournament focused to bring teams in from South Dakota, North Dakota, Colorado, adjacent states, that'll help drive in the tourism. That really, I think, is the impetus of why that bill was approved. And so it'll have an indoor, outdoor component, turf fields, volleyball, basketball. So it'll be a multi-purpose facility.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
I actually have a couple of questions. So going to this map on Gretna, so you own segment 9 and part of 8 on this map. Is section 1, is that where the mall is existing now, or is that 1 and 2?
Yes, the mall is on number 1 on the aerial.
Okay. And I, just because I drive by there every day, coming and going from Lincoln twice, I know that on section 10, there's some industrial buildings that are going up. Who owns that land?
I believe that's a combination of a company in Omaha called New Street Properties.
Okay.
And then I think the Hymus Corporation owns some land there as well.
Okay, all right. Because that would not, my understanding of Good Life is I don't know that industrial, certainly wasn't intended to bring industrial property. What are you planning on doing on your segments?
We'd like to do a retail entertainment-based concept, create synergy with what's happening with the outlet mall, and then take advantage of all the interstate frontage. We've got nearly a mile worth of Highway 31 and I-80 frontage. So it's one of the unique pieces within this overall district. And we'd like to do something that is retail focused.
And the question I asked Mr. Rogers, I never said it that way before, Mike Rogers, equally kind and gracious, but about the amendment, with these couple of relatively, or appear to be small changes, you would be supportive of 1374?
Yes.
Okay. And then the other question I asked was, have there been conversations between you and the proponents about how to resolve this?
There have not, no.
Okay. Okay, all right, thank you. Seeing no other questions, thank you for your testimony. Next opponent.
Hello, Mr. Vice Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Rob Heineman, ROBBHEINEMAN. I'm with 635 Holdings. I'm here in opposition today, but I think as we've all discussed, I think what Mr. Rogers said is perfect. If those changes were made, I think it's perfect legislation. I'm here for the second time in front of you, was very supportive of the original legislation, have known Rod for a long time, think he's a visionary. He and I were both involved in the Legends project in Kansas City, which Rod is kind of, leveraging that into this vision as well. And I think just to give you an analogy, the Legends, which is, I think it's slightly 1,500 acres, I think has at least 7 developers that I can count sitting here today. So that's been a very diverse set of kind of developers over time. This is a huge project. There's a lot of work to get done. I've been involved for about a year in looking at sports and entertainment aspects of this. Have probably $500 million worth of users kind of teed up, ready to go. I do not have Great Wolf Lodge yet, but obviously looking at different things like that. And Gretna's a great spot. It's a perfect location. The users that we're talking to will probably generate between 4 and 5 million users on an annual basis. But we got to get going. And financing's not simple in the world right now, as we all know, with rates. And I just think it takes multiple oars pushing to make this thing happen. And so that's why we're supportive in the modifications being made to kind of the legislation. We did have the opportunity to spend some time with Senator Linehan to go see one of the users that we bring to Gretna. It's a company called the St. James. It's a 400,000 square foot indoor facility in Washington, D.C., generates about 5 million annual visitors. We have a letter of intent with them to build a facility in Gretna. So again, we want to get going. And it's going to take a lot of hard work. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions from the committee members? Senator Berman.
If I remember correctly from last year, several of us on the committee had kids that went to Legends at one time in Kansas City. Do you look for this project to be, very similar in size and attraction for visitors as Legends, or, Legends, I think, has a racetrack nearby?
Yeah, it's going to be different. And, I hadn't heard of the, kind of the introduction of sort of an NHL opportunity in Omaha. Professional sports take kind of developments like this to the next level. Kansas City does have NASCAR, and it has Sporting Kansas City, the soccer team that I'm involved in. So that creates a lot of visitation. But I do think with the componentry that we're talking about here, whether it's, the St. James that I just mentioned, or, working in collaboration with Jake Ferrant and Mammoth, there's probably at least 20 outdoor fields that would be built here. That's another couple million visitors a year. So I just think it's a huge opportunity. I think there will be tons of visitors. And I think if you look kind of Omaha north and northeast, Kansas City captures a lot of that traffic today. And I think if this facility existed, Kansas City would get cut off by a lot of that. So I do think I can easily see 5 to 6 million annual visitors for sports in this district.
And what does Legends attract?
I don't know. Nebraska Furniture Mart alone is the largest tourist attraction in the state of Kansas. I think it's 15 million visitors to just the store alone. And I'm sure the rest of the visitation dwarfs that, right? So it's like, let's say it's 20 million total, but I don't know just for certain.
Thank you.
Senator Meyer.
Yes, thank you. So with multiple developers, there would still be one master plan that everybody would agree to as they develop and go forward with the different purposes of all these tracks?
I suppose what you'd say is there probably would be collaboration around non-conflicting uses, right? Because if we're all trying to use the same, sales tax stream, we need to optimize that. So it's going to take a collaborative effort working together to do that. Would make no sense to do two $50 million fields complexes, for example, right? We're all going after sort of the same pie. So I think that, as it relates to just retail, you're going to be chasing every kind of retail that you can imagine, obviously, so you can optimize the power of the district.
Thank you. Any other questions from committee members? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you very much.
Any other opponent testimony?
Brought in the big guns today as a previous athlete that was recruited by the previous coach. I'm loving the concept. I'm loving the potential of the development. My name is Angie Lauritsen, ANGIE-LAURITSEN. I'm providing some comments to you because I know that there's no way that I'll be able to cover everything that I would like to cover within the amount of time that we're given here today. But as a previous city council member within the city of Gretna, I am representing someone that will be voting on this, whether this can happen or not. I've run communications for the last 3 school bond initiatives and also the half-cent sales tax initiative that was very successful back in spring of 2020. What a lot of people don't know is that the outlet mall currently, or in the past, most recently, already had 2 TIF projects tied to it. So we had a sales tax component that actually sunsetted in December of 2022. But we still have the property tax piece of the TIF that is currently tied to the existing outlet mall. So up until December of 2022, the city of Gretna has not seen any benefit with the outlet mall. So I want to disperse any kind of notion that Gretna is making all kinds of money off of the outlet mall. It is within our city limits, so we are responsible for providing first responder response. We are responsible for water and sewer. We are responsible for many of the different things when it comes to infrastructure, when it comes to supporting the outlet mall. So when we are talking about a large development like this, there's just a lot of concerns from residents and obviously landowners too. The uncomfortable thing is, the first thing that I thought of when I thought of this development is sewer. How many toilets are going to be involved within this development? Where does that sewer go? The city currently has We own and operate our own water department. And so we have an agreement with MUD in Omaha that we are pumping all of our sewer north to them, but can they handle an additional 2,000 acres of development? The South Sarpy Sewer program is concentrating on east of 84th Street currently. And so if we were going to go south with our sewer, it would be hundreds of millions of dollars to build out the sewer line. Water, we currently pull water from the aquifer. We have 13 wells, I believe 12 are functioning. This would make us have to create another stored water source within the city of Gretna in order to handle this. So I see that I'm out of time.
Well, let's see if you have any questions.
Yes.
Are there any questions from the committee members? Yes, Senator Duncan.
Thank you, Vice Chair Von Gillern. Thank you for being here today. You've obviously sat through the testimony, and so I'm curious, your opposition, would that be alleviated by some of the modifications that have been proposed with regard to the constitutionality of the language, or is your opposition more rooted in some of the growth concerns that you have around the Gretna community?
It's more about the growth. We're talking about voters that need to approve this. And there's half of the population that is very much against growth. I was in the camp of you're either growing or you're dying. So I was always in favor of development and growth within our, but because of the cost of land, I know that developers need additional funding avenues in order to be able to develop within our area, only because acreage cost currently, if you have access to sewer and water, is running up to about $110,000 per acre to sell, plus all of the other issues that come in. But I appreciate all the comments by the developers and how excited everyone is for this. I live 3 miles from the front door of the outlet mall. This very much affects me, it affects my family and the residents within Gretna. I have information here about infrastructure when it comes to roads. Highway 631 is currently slated to go to 6 lanes both ways. The interstate intersection is slated to go to a diamond one at some point because of the high traffic. There's just a lot of infrastructure needs that I think if we can just pump the brakes on this, because this is a funding thing that may never go away, is the fear that we have when the city of Gretna has not seen any benefit from that outlet mall as far as fees and help to do all this. We still have a volunteer fire department. How do we take care of 2,000 additional acres when we're bringing in a lot of people? If we bring in 3,000 housing units, we're looking at building an additional, at minimum, 2 elementary schools and a middle school. There's just a lot of financial impact to our community outside of just this development.
Thank you.
Other questions from the committee? I had a quick question. There was a question raised earlier about whether the mall was in the city, within the city limits, and I believe you answered that. It is within the city limits.
Currently, the outlet mall is within city limits. All of the other outside land is not. It would have to be annexed in order to be within city limits for this project.
So the map that was handed out earlier, which showed properties both north or east and west of Highway 31 and Highway 631, that is not part of the city limits?
It is not.
So there's a sliver that reaches out and
along
grabs
the
them all?
highway, the right of way is a part of city
Okay.
limits,
All right.
and then a little bit on the south side. My other concern with annexations, as many of you know, is that they need to be revenue neutral. So what are we offsetting when we annex this 2,000 acres, we have to offset it with something else.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. Senator Albright.
Thank you. Just have a couple quick questions. Are you still on the city council?
I am not. I'm
We're
just a
not.
regular citizen.
So I guess some questions I would have is, if it's not in the city, this project, obviously the mall's part of the project, but they would certainly have to engage with the county board, the Sarpy County Board, correct? To try to work through a lot of the sewer and water, and I'm hearing that you're gonna get a paid fire department soon.
We currently went from a rural to a suburban, so now we are actually just hiring paramedics and EMTs.
Right.
There has not a plan to go to a full paid fire.
because I can't imagine a project like this could come in without having a fully paid fire situation, fire department. Otherwise, the insurance would be astronomical. But so that is a big question, whether it's because the cities and the counties would have to work together. It would be a long time before Gretna would be annexing that in, before it would have to make money for you to go out and be able to take it anyway. So yeah, there's a lot going on here, but a lot of the parties need to be at the table together. And I can't imagine they've gone this far without talking to a few other people that need to.
And I've had the current city council members reach out to me too, so.
Okay, and I can appreciate what you're saying when it comes, I sat on the city council for eight years in Sarpy County in Papillion when it was the fastest growing city. And I know those growing things. And I know that they would have to go through hearings. You know, everybody will probably have a chance to talk about it because you can't just do it without a public hearing. So thank you for your information here today. Appreciate it.
Generated one more thought, one more question from me. Considering the development that's going to happen here and the millions and millions of dollars that will be invested in generating property taxes, wouldn't the city be just to annex that land, annex this property? With the development that's going to happen, I mean, certainly the growing pains and the speed of the growth would be a challenge. I understand that, but from a financial standpoint, I mean, you sure build a lot of schools with property taxes that's going to be generated.
Yeah.
Off of the construction.
Unfortunately, we're not getting, the school has not seen any benefit from the outlet mall currently at this point, just due to the property taxes still going to help fund the outlet
Because it was
mall.
TIF?
Correct.
Okay.
It's still a TIF project.
But it will at what point?
I'm not exactly for sure when that comes up. I'm sure somebody smart in here knows the
Okay.
exact timeline of when that comes off.
TIF
It was
ends
a
at
15-year TIF
Okay.
originally, and I believe it started in 2011.
All right. Thank you very much for your testimony.
Mhm.
Appreciate that. Any other opponent testimony? Afternoon.
Good afternoon, Senators. My name is Gerald Vinduska. It's spelled J-A-R-E-L-V-I-N-D-U-S-K-A. I'm here in opposition, and contrary to previous testifiers, I don't really see any asset to the Good Life District. And the reason I'm saying that is I'm a believer in free market capitalism. I have always felt that if a project can pay for itself, somebody in the market economy will build it. Because in my experience, all throughout life, it seems like whenever I see one of these subsidies using tax dollars to fund these projects, it always seems good on the surface, but then down the line, the taxpayers always seem to eventually have to pay for it. And I can give you an example. Like I was raised in Ralston, and now I live on a farm just south of Gretna. But Ralston was always very fiscally responsible. Everything was done efficiently. The snow was removed, the roads were kept up, and all that. And then people were sold a bill of goods about the Ralston Arena. First thing you know, there was debt up to their eyeballs, and come to you guys and trying to get another $100 million to bail them out and everything. And that's the way it usually happens. And as far as the previous testifier said, well, a city has to grow or it dies. Well, I don't believe in that. There's a word called sustainability. Humans can't grow cities forever. You can be sustainable. And there's been an effort in the legislature this session to shift some of the burden of property tax into sales tax. Well, what sense would there, and you got a lot of opposition on that, unfortunately, because they said it was a regressive type of tax that would hurt the poor more. Well, I don't think that's logical either, because the richer people buy more things, they pay more sales tax, and there's always options. But with sales tax on how much you have to pay, for instance, if you needed a vehicle, if you can't afford a $60,000 vehicle, you can buy a used one. If you can't afford clothes, you can go to Goodwill, and many ways, there's ways to get around that. And property tax is the most regressive tax, even for poor people, because they have to pay it. If they own a house, they have to pay it. If they rent, they're paying it because the landlord is in business to make money. The tenant pays for the property tax. Well, I see I'm done, but just one more quick point. One thing I'm a little afraid of this too is eminent domain. I hope in getting in business with the city, that the city, there's going to be some holdouts on this property in this district, and the city then would have the power to condemn properties, because I have a friend that they've already tried that once, to build a sports complex in Gretna, and it was really a terrible thing for this lady that thought of losing part of her farm through condemnation. But anyway, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer it.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from committee members? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Any other opponent testimony? Seeing none, anyone who would like to testify in the neutral position?
Hello, Senators. My name is Paul, Paul Kratz, Kratz. I just wanted to respond to some of the, the due process or constitutional issues that were mentioned. First of all, I have to realize that in this particular case, the applicant, Rod Yates, signed a contract with the Department of Economic Development that requires a number of things. Requires him to spend $500 million, make sure there are so many visitors, make sure there's so much employment, and these are rather strict limits that he is obligated to perform. Now, with that, it seems like he ought to be able to have some control over the area, so he has some consistency in what's built, and that he can meet these standards. Secondly, I think you also have to realize nothing's being taken away from the landowners at this point. They still have their ability to obtain all their other entitlements, like tax increment financing and some of the others. So again, they're not losing anything. So I don't see where there's a due process argument that something's being taken away from them. I guess that's pretty much straightforward from that standpoint. Okay, and I guess those are my comments.
Thank you. Any questions from committee members? Senator Albright.
Thank you for allowing me to ask a few questions. So you're an attorney for any
I'm an attorney for
this room, or?
the actual entity is I-31, Highway 31, Interstate 80.
31.
And I am an attorney. I used to be the attorney for the city of Omaha for 20-some years.
I thought your name sounded familiar. Thanks
We
for being
built a lot of stuff, and this legislation would have been very helpful at that point in time.
Right.
But we got things built.
Okay, so you probably haven't seen the amendment that they're asking,
I have seen the amendment.
and how do you feel about that?
I think that's necessary to do what I just expressed, to make sure that Mr. Yates can perform as required by the DED. And again, to have some consistency in the design, the development. So yeah, and also that makes it clear that he's a program manager. In fact, the DED used that term, that he's a program manager, his entity, I should say, is a program manager. So there's that intent at least coming from the state.
Well, it's nice to have an attorney sitting across from me in a hearing that I don't have to pay. So thank you.
Most people don't say that.
I appreciate your comments. Thanks.
Thank you. Senator Kauth.
Thank you, Vice Chair Von Gillern. Hi, Mr. Katz, how are you?
How you doing?
So I'm confused by who you're working for. Highway 31 and Interstate 80, is there? a
Yeah,
group
that's an LLC. Mr. Yates is part of that, so that's why this reference to him. But that's the entity that the DED approved.
Okay, so Mr. Yates formed the LLC, I-80 Highway 31, and that's who applied for the?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
He has other partners to him. I believe I don't think he's the only one.
Okay.
I don't know. I wasn't involved in that.
Okay.
So,
All right, good to see you again.
yeah, good to see you.
Any other questions? Okay, I'll ask the question that they're both hedging around. You're justifying as in the neutral position, but you're working for
I'm a
the
consultant.
client that testified in as a proponent.
I'm a consultant for him. But I wanted to come up here in the neutral position just to respond to some comments that were made by some of the proponents and try to clear, at least in my mind, what I believe the legal parameters are.
Okay, was Mr. Rogers, in your opinion, incorrect in what he stated about the Constitution?
I disagree with him, yes.
Disagree, okay, all right.
And he disagrees
That was
with me.
very lawyerly response, very well done. All right, thank you for your testimony today.
You bet, thank you.
Anyone else who'd like to testify in a neutral position? Seeing none, Senator Linehan, would you like to close? And while you come up, we had 1 proponent letter and 4 opponent letters and 0 neutral.
Thank you much for hanging out here today. And so we get through this. I'm not a lawyer, so we're going to have to figure out the constitutionality of it. I get that. So I think I'm hearing they're not talking. They need to be talking. I'm most a little confused from, and I very much appreciate the city councilwoman being here, but I'm a little confused because they are getting property taxes off that. When Mr. Yates took that over, it was a mess. It was not producing any income, and I don't know what the valuation was, but I'm sure it's significantly increased. And it's the perfect kind of property if you're a school district. Nobody lives there. Well, maybe Mr. Yates does, but nobody, I say that because he works all the time. But I remember talking to Elkhorn School District, that one of the greatest things that ever happened to Elkhorn School District was Village Point, because it's all this new property that creates huge amounts of property taxes, and there's no children to go to school. So, and now we're talking about a whole nother property where, yes, there would be some residents that live there, but a bunch of people would be coming and going and paying sales taxes, paying occupational taxes on the hotel rooms, paying, I don't know if they're gonna have a restaurant tax, but they could. I mean, and the other thing, it's gonna get developed. I mean, Senator Van Gillern, you and I drive down Highway 31, Highway 6. When I moved there, whatever, 10 years ago, there was almost nothing but cornfields, and now between Elkhorn and Gretna, there's hardly any cornfields. So it's gonna get developed, so we can have 10 more truck stops, or strip malls, or we can have this great project. So I'm for the great project, and there will be growing pains, but as you know, Senator Albright, we have tools, SIDs. Omaha grows all the time, and they don't do the infrastructure. Developer does the infrastructure, and then they absorb the area. So I think some of this is, I'd be scared too if I was on the city council. There's a lot of responsibility. But I'm sure that they could provide the committee with the revenue they're generating for Gretna, and it's pretty significant.
Thank you. Any questions from committee members? Just for clarity, the bill as it was passed last year and the version 1374 that is proposed this year does nothing to discount property taxes.
No.
Correct?
Right.
So the full property tax load burden / benefit to the community is still generated, unlike a TIF project that was mentioned.
No, it was TIF. So but it will come off TIF. I think they said 3 years. It will come off TIF.
Well, the mall will, but,
right.
But new development constructed under 1374.
It may or may, that would be, again, that's up to
That'd be
the
up to the
city.
city, correct?
Right,
Yeah.
it's up to the city.
Okay.
And it's that's up to the city.
All right, okay, thank you. Seeing no other questions, that'll wrap up our hearing on 1374. We're going to take about an 8-minute recess. We'll start back at 4:35. On LB 1403, welcome Senator Linehan.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Von Gillern and members of the Revenue Committee. I'm Luann Linehan, L-O-U-A-N-N-L-I-N-E-H-A-N. I represent Legislative District 39, Elkhorn and Waterloo. Today I'm introducing LB 1403. LB 1403 is a technical cleanup bill for the Opportunity Scholarship Act, which was passed in the legislature in 2023. LB 1403 will do the following. The bill will eliminate the word tuition and replace it with the cost to educate an eligible student. I added this language to clarify my original intent with Opportunity Scholarship. Currently, tuition is confusing to several private school systems. Therefore, I changed the terminology to be the cost to educate a qualified student so that schools could accept scholarships under the Opportunity Scholarship Act. The bill adds the 6th grade as another eligible grade for entry under Opportunity Scholarship Act. Currently, only children in kindergarten or 9th grade would be able to receive a scholarship. Adding in the 6th grade helps provide coverage to more children. It's come to my attention that some systems, private systems, they only go K through 5 and then 6 through 12. So we were leaving out, I know we were leaving out a significant Lutheran high school here in Lincoln. LB 1403 would allow banks and insurance companies to claim the tax credit against their deposit premium fees. That was just, should have been in the bill and was a drafting oversight. I have AM 2163 on file, which would add an additional eligibility criteria. And this came to the attention of people who are doing the scholarship program now. You have military families who get transferred into Nebraska. Their child is transferring into a K through 12 school. And because they're coming from someplace else and they wouldn't be able, even though they're military families, they wouldn't be able to opt in at the different grade levels. And it's going to be a problem because if you're working at Offutt, you can live in Iowa or Nebraska. And in Iowa, you have that option. So this would hopefully help keep people in Nebraska. Lastly, I have an amendment for the committee to consider, AM 2499, that will sunset the Opportunity Scholarship Act for December 31st on 2024. Thank you, and happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the committee members? Senator Kauth.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Will you explain the last part, you're sunsetting?
Yes. Sunset the current law on December 31st of 2024. I don't know if we'll need to do that or not, but that is one of the options.
Okay, thank you.
If we pass, if another bill gets passed to replace this bill, this one needs to sunset.
Got it. There we go. Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee members? Seeing none. Thank you, Senator Linehan. We'll open for our first proponent testimony.
I didn't ask him.
Okay. Seeing no proponents, we open for our first opponent testimony.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair, members of the Revenue Committee. My name is Dunixi Gareka, D-U-N-I-X-I-G-U-E-R-E-C-A. I am the Executive Director of Stanford Schools, a nonprofit dedicated to advancing public education in Nebraska. Stanford Schools is here in opposition of LB 1403. As many of you know, Stanford Schools opposed the Opportunity Scholarship Act when it was introduced last year. We will maintain our reservations about the program as a whole and as a matter of public policy, but I will not reiterate our broader concerns about the act here. Rather wish to focus on the changes proposed at LB 1403. There is several technical changes. I'm just going to focus on one. It's changing the definition of education scholarship from all part of tuition and fees for attending a qualified school to, quote, the cost necessary to educate an eligible student. So LB 1403 does not define what cost necessary to educate means, leaving interpretation of that phrase to schools, scholarship granting organizations, the Department of Revenue, and courts. It is unclear what expertise scholarship granting organization to the Department of Revenue will have in evaluating what is a particular expense above tuition costs are necessary as proposed in LB 1403. This is especially troublesome when coupled with the fact that the Department of Revenue, while exercising some oversight over the SGOs in the Act, is not well positioned to examine claims of necessary educational expenses beyond tuition because the department is not required to receive reporting from the SGOs upon which they can make such a determination. While this change may seem minor, experience from other states indicates that this change may open up the program to a variety of dubious claims surrounding scholarship education expenses. For example, in Arizona, the Empowerment Scholarship Program, which allows parents to spend monies on, quote, reading, grammar, math, social studies, and science instructions, but, quote, the rest can be spent on anything educational. This led to misuse in the programs with allowed expenses going towards $4,000 pianos, trampoline parks, kayaks, and cowboy roping lessons and tickets to entertainment venues such as SeaWorld. Moreover, the change from a tuition-based scholarship model to a, quote, cost to educate model creates a linked framework, which is now reflected in other tax credit scholarship programs across the country. Most states with a tax credit program, an individual student may qualify for a tax credit scholarship that is either limited to a set dollar amount or full tuition. Moving to a cost to educate model within Nebraska in the position of expanding a brand new program without the expertise of other states to lean on and learn from. For those reasons, we ask the committee not to advance LB 1403, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from committee members? Senator Kauth.
Hi, thank you, Vice Chair Von Gillern. Okay, so you said you're the executive director for Standard Schools.
Correct.
Aren't you also a registered lobbyist? And are you lobbying for a group in relation to this?
So I'm the executive director of Stanford Schools, and we're an organization that does lobbying for the body. And as such, there are certain regulations and registrations that we have to, process with the state, and we are fully compliant with all those.
So yes, you're a registered lobbyist?
We follow all the laws as set forth by the state of Nebraska.
This is a yes or no question. Yes, you are?
Senator, I am fully registered in compliance with all.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I would ask, and I think it's been standard policy, if you are a registered lobbyist, that you state that within your opening testimony. So for future reference, thank you for your testimony. Any other opponent testimony? Oh, yeah, no, we didn't have any other questions. Thank you.
Mr. Vice Chairman, members of the committee, for the record, my name is John Hansen, John Hansen, Hansen, and I'm the president and also the registered lobbyist for Nebraska Farmers Union. At our recent state convention, it's always interesting to find out what stirs people's passions, and the two different ballot issues really sort of dominated our policy development this year. One was the EPIC tax proposal, and the other one was the underlying legislation, which this provides the technical update for. And in both cases, after a lot of discussion back and forth, on about a 2-to-1 vote, I would say there was continued clear opposition to using public dollars for private education, and there was strong opposition to the EPIC tax proposal. And so in both cases, they ended up with special orders of business, which represent priorities for our organization. So I appear before you today representing the clear policy direction of our organization and my board of directors, and there's no real point in me rehashing any of the old log-standing arguments that we've had on this particular issue today. It is Valentine's Day. And so with that, I'll end my testimony and try to get out of here as quickly as possible.
Bless you. And any questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Hansen.
Thank you. Happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you, sir. Other opponent testimony, please.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Von Gillern and members of the Revenue Committee. My name is Joey Adler-Ruane, Joeyadler, space Ruane, and I am the Policy Director at Open Sky Policy Institute. We're here today to testify in opposition to LB 1403 for several reasons, many of which you've already heard, so I'm going to try and go through this as quickly as possible. Open Sky opposed LB 753 last year, including that it reduces the tax revenue available to the state, and estimates suggest that it could redirect some public funds away from public education. We've talked to this committee extensively about our concerns in the past on this. Specifically, Open Sky opposes expanding LB 753 in any form, especially not at this time. LB 753 just took effect only weeks ago on January 1st. Across the country in states where similar programs have been in place for several years, we have seen numerous examples where similar measures ended up costing more in state funding than expected. While LB 753 includes a funding cap, we're concerned that there's a clear track record in other states where the cost of these programs have grown substantially over time. Finally, LB 753 includes several reporting requirements, and we would like to see data from those reports before any changes to the program are considered. It's for these reasons that we oppose LB 1403. Thank you for your time. I'd be happy to take any questions. Also, I missed you all so much that I made sure I had one chance to get up here this year.
Any questions from the committee?
Thank you.
None. Thank you for being here today. Any other opponent testimony?
That's hard to follow. I'm not very
Yes,
funny.
it is.
So,
Good luck.
good afternoon. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share with the Revenue Committee. My name is John Neal, Johnnneal, and I represent the public schools. I want to apologize. Traditionally, we have a board member who's available to come during the day to share testimony. You're kind of stuck with me today. I'll do the best to share the issues of the board and answer any questions you have. LPS opposes LB 1483. It represents an expansion of the Opportunity Scholarship Act, and we have opposed that. It just passed this last year in LB 753. And one of the reasons we oppose it, I'll share with today, is because it cannot achieve its stated goal of improving quality education across the state for all children. And let me just share a couple of examples just briefly, because we've talked about this before. First, the Opportunity Scholarship Act does not include a method for measuring the achievement change, better or worse, of students using the Opportunity Scholarship, and it doesn't document how the money is used to identify or potentially identify effective practices. So it cannot demonstrate that it improves the quality of educational outcomes or practices. Second, the law is not intended to help all children. According to the Opportunity Scholarship Act, other than for race scholarship granting agencies and schools that receive those scholarships can establish requirements in their enrollment practices to bar certain children from attending their schools, making it nearly impossible for this program to be available to all students. And I gave an example in testimony in the Education Committee. There was a question about how do you know what that discrimination may or may not look like. So I took a piece from the Pius X handbook to show how that might look. It's not to imply anything about Pius X. Pius X is a wonderful high school. Both my parents graduated there, lots of my friends, but it's just an example of how it might look. This is the non-discrimination policy from Pius. Pius X admits students of any race, color, national, or ethnic origin to all the rights, privileges, programs, and activities generally accorded or made available to all students. Consequently, we do not discriminate on the basis of race, color, or national ethnic origin in the administration of our educational policies, admission policies, scholarships, loan programs, athletics, or other administered programs. Problem is, by omission, Pius X retains the option of discriminating based on any student characteristic not included in their non-discrimination policy. So, for example, those potential points could be religion, sex, disability, homelessness, English language proficiency, and others. Since the Opportunity Scholarship cannot meet its stated goal through the absence of academic and financial accountability measures and the presence of discriminatory practices, I'll be quick, potentially barring some children from participating, we oppose the advancement of LB 1403 or anything that seeks to extend Opportunity Scholarship.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from committee members? Senator Cow?
Thank you, Vice Chair Von Gillern. Mr. Neal, so basically, if it's not something that 100% of all students across the state qualify for or it can be successful for, so you're of the all or none persuasion with this.
No, I think that would.
I'm not done.
Oh, pardon me. Go ahead.
And I want to follow that up with how successful are you and what metrics are you actually using to measure? Because I look at the metrics for school as being more about if kids learn how to read and write and they're succeeding on their test scores versus the stuff that you're pulling up. So I think it's a difference of the metrics that you're actually using. So you're saying that if schools don't do exactly what you think they should as far as admittance, then we should not have this sort of a program for any student whatsoever.
So in the question I'm hearing are, one, is it an all or nothing thing? And is that the only category? And then two, what are the metrics when you talk about the goal of improving the quality of education available to all children? What does that mean? Looking at the second one first, when you look at all children, I think it's the effort to try to reach all children. This bill, for example, is set up in a way that does not attempt to try and reach all. Not the guidance of actually reaching all, but it provides within the structure itself the ability not to reach all. And I'll give you one example that's been talked about a lot in the education committee, which is option enrollment. Option enrollment is a way for public school students to move from one district to another district. And one of the issues that's been raised several times, in fact, a bill just passed last year to try to deal with this issue, is a student with a disability may not be accepted from one district to another. And the concern is if you deny any group or some groups of students that option, is it really an option? And I think it's kind of an apples and oranges question, because but in this particular case, this is set up in a way that allows people to say, we're not going to take all, when the clear intent of the law is to try to do all. And we see a discrepancy there.
Okay, so I disagree with that mostly because this is an attempt to do some good in the reality that public schools can't do everything and can't serve every student the way each student needs to. And because kids are individuals and they need different things. And so I look at you coming in and saying it's not perfect for absolutely everyone. So we're not going to do it for anyone.
Oh, and I apologize. That was not my,
Okay,
was not my intent to say it's not perfect, so we shouldn't do it.
That's how I interpreted
apologize.
that.
Then I didn't
Thank
explain
you.
myself very well. I think the intent is to say if the state gets behind a program that's attempting to reach the state, it shouldn't include a built-in structure to allow discrimination based on the decision of a private entity.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Next opponent testifier, please.
It is still afternoon.
Yep.
Yes. Thank
11
you.
more minutes.
Thank you. And it's still Valentine's Day, but this was the best offer I got, so we won't go into what that says. Actually, I'm really, really happy to be here. Thank you to the committee members, Senator, for your allowing this to happen today. My name is Rita Bennett, R-I-T-A, B-E-N-N-E-T-T, and I'm here to voice my strong opposition to LB 1403, as well as to testify on behalf of the Nebraska State Education Association. This bill does make significant and troubling expansions to provisions in last year's LB 753. The bill expands the amount of money that can be funneled to private schools through scholarship granting organizations by expanding the number of entities that can contribute to include insurance companies, financial institutions, and many others. And it also expands the list of tax liabilities that can be converted into LB 753 credits. This bill further expands the list of qualified private school expenses you heard mentioned earlier beyond just tuition and fees with the language changes that this would propose to 753 or the change that was from 753. So now we have the language of including the full cost to educate an eligible student attending a qualified school. As we have seen happen in other states, that open-ended language you heard referred to earlier allows those private school scholarships to be used for anything from ski passes to Disney tickets to expensive Lego sets. It's essentially you consider negative consequences for public education if there is an expansion of LB 753. Under this bill, even more credits will be used to divert even more public dollars away from funding things like public schools. That will lead to decreased financial support for public education. potentially resulting in understaffed schools, outdated resources, and inadequate facilities. LB 1403 further exacerbates inequalities because you heard obviously about the potential of discriminating, but also because it likely benefits wealthy families who, after receiving a few $100s, are still able to afford to pay the full cost of private school tuition. Again, economically disadvantaged families having limited options. That continues to lead to a two-tiered educational system where students from wealthier families continue to have more opportunities. There's also that lack of accountability in private schools that accept 753 funds. Private schools not subject to the same level of scrutiny or reporting and regulations as public schools, which also contributes to lower standards, perhaps, a lack of transparency, and inadequate protection of student rights. And I'm just about finished here. If private schools face the same regulatory environment as public schools, including many of the unfunded mandates that we happen to have currently, what you find is that private school per pupil expenses would be much higher, and often we lose that point when we talk about comparing public versus private school costs. So it's for those reasons that 753 is going to be on the ballot in November, allowing we the people to decide. And so I encourage you to indefinitely postpone this bill.
Questions from committee members. Senator Kauth.
Thank you, Vice Chair Von Gillern. First of all, happy Valentine's Day.
Yes, thank you.
I want to say that before I say this next, because I'm getting really frustrated with people who come in and say that wealthy people will do better. Wealthy people are going to say, hey, my taxes can go to this place. They're not going to not pay taxes. And I have questions about, I'm sure that you support the child care tax credit, correct?
Of course.
Of course. Mm-hmm. That's money that by your standards could be going to a public school. So the disassociative disorder that I see happening with people when they talk about this is just crazy.
Being characterized as having a dissociative disorder is a little disturbing to me.
What's happening? What's happening is you're saying not this tax credit, but I'm good with other tax credits, but this one will harm public schools, but other tax credits.
The child tax credit could potentially apply to any taxpayer. My ability to give a substantial amount of money to one of the SGOs and receive 100% tax credit, which doesn't happen with any other charitable contribution, is what sets this apart from things like the credit that you were talking about.
You're directing your taxes to go. It's not. You're not giving an amount of money that will make you pay less taxes. You're saying, okay, I have to pay $1,000 in taxes. I'm going to let 500 of it go to this tax credit. So again, it's really distressing how often that point has been made, and people seemingly deliberately ignore that point.
I think that you definitely see it differently than I with respect to than what we see it with respect to the 100% tax credit and the SGO donation being the only 100% tax credit that would be offered by the state. Certainly takes bigger chunks of money out of state revenues. All of the things that state revenues help to support, such as many educational issues, besides just, property tax. The bottom line, though, is it will have a more detrimental effect, and it does not advantage as many people. And in states where this has been, and similar legislation has been enacted, the statistics are there to show that the wealthy tend to be the ones who continue to benefit the most, in particular from that tax credit.
I would disagree wholeheartedly with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kauth. Other questions? Senator Merman?
Yes. Are you saying public schools don't go to Disney and as a school go to Disney and go skiing?
There's no funding associated at all with those kinds of activities. I can give you one specific example. My daughter was in marching band at Southeast High School. And the trips that the marching band took when they were invited to participate in, say, bowl games or bowl game parades and that sort of thing, we fundraised or I had to pay for that out of pocket. There is no school funds at all associated with that. I spent many years sponsoring Future Business Leaders of America as an educator. And my students also, same thing. whenever there was, and those were academic related competitions that we would go to, regional, national conferences. Our students had to fundraise or pay their own way, or families had to. So that's a clear answer that absolutely not, we're not able to use. We certainly don't use taxpayer dollars in that way, nor would we have, simply because, again, that's something that those particular students were able to do. So yeah, I guess that's the best answer I have for that question.
They didn't use school buses or any school?
No, we had to charter our own buses and pay that expense of transportation was factored into what each student was expected to either fundraise or their family pay for.
Well, that's not the way all public schools do it. I know some use school buses and those kinds of things. And also the foundation, I think, contributes, which is charitable.
And during my years, at least, our chapter didn't receive any money from the foundation for that sort of thing.
Okay, and also the Lego sets, I think those are an educational tool that I'm not sure if they're used in
It
public
might
schools.
depend upon the circumstance in which they're used.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The questions from the committee, Senator Meyer.
Thank you, Chairman Von Gillern. Since you opened the avenue of accountability, I'm going to go down that road. Last year, the legislature put in about $1.355 billion into additional state aid schools. Last night, there was a bill introduced, I guess, across the hallway in the Education Committee for somewhere between 10 and $15 million to help your members who have about a 44% reading score in Nebraska, to help them learn how to teach reading. I guess I'm not seeing much accountability amongst your members in performing basic tasks of reading when we're asked to supplement all of the dollars that are going into the formula with another $15 million to help our reading scores. So I guess there's a lack of accountability there already, that we have to do that because our kids are reading at very, very low scores. Now they changed the cut score, but that's not really what we're talking about here. But 44% is pretty much a state average.
So thank you for bringing that up and allowing me to address it. Two things that I heard about. So first of all, the increased funding last year, or the dollars that were designated toward public schools, which absolutely we appreciate. However, it wasn't that true increase because some of those same dollars were reduced from property tax dollars. So all of that was not new spending. But then the other issue with accountability, the fact that you're able to quote that 44% means there is accountability. Public schools are required to report and to answer to the taxpayers when there are concerns about reading scores or any other scores. So the very fact that you have that statistic, you won't have that, you don't have that for private schools.
Oh,
And there's no requirement
I
under
could
this
probably
bill.
get that at every private school.
I would love to see that published, actually. I think that would be terrific. Because again, all of us want all children to do well in school. There's
Sure.
no doubt. Whether it's a private or a public school, on that we all agree. We want what's best for Nebraska's children. And so absolutely, I'm glad we're in agreement on that.
Okay, thanks.
You're
Other
welcome.
questions from the
Thank you.
committee, Senator Merman.
You mentioned public or private school. Did you mean to omit homeschool?
Oh, not at all. Actually, I mean, in my head, I can consider that another form of private school, in the sense that if I homeschooled my children, mine happened to both attend Lincoln Public Schools, but if I did homeschool my children, I wouldn't open it up to the whole neighborhood. So no, that would be private in my eyes.
Well,
No,
thank you for
absolutely.
including.
Because
homeschooling.
absolutely, and I had students who had been homeschooled up to the high school age and then came to my classroom, and I was delighted to hear about their experiences at homeschool as well.
Thank you for including.
You bet, absolutely. And I'll return the Happy Valentine's Day.
Okay, all right, hang on. I got a couple questions.
Oh, yes, sir.
Based on your comments about accountability, are you truly, truly concerned about the performance of the education, about the teaching, I gotta figure out how to form this sentence. About the level of teaching performance in private schools, is that really a concern to you when you look at graduation rates and you look at college acceptance rates and SAT scores and ACT scores? Is that truly a concern of yours, that when you talk about accountability and lack of accountability in private schools, are you truly concerned that private schools are not educating kids to the same level or above of public schools?
I'm trying to guess if there's an underlying implication there.
Not at all.
First of all, I'm always concerned about student success, no matter what building they're in or whether they're at home school. That makes no difference to us because we're all about success for all children. Okay, so there's that. Now, if what you're asking is whether or not there's an implication that I don't think they would be well educated if there's not the accountability standards, for example, that are the same, that's not, I'm not suggesting that at all. It's just that we can't know. And whenever public dollars, public tax dollars are diverted or revenues from tax dollars are reduced to allow for all the things that the state revenue pie pays for. That's the difference, is where there's public tax money associated with that, taxpayers should have some sort of measure or ability to know what are the results of those dollars. Are they in fact succeeding at helping to educate more students? So that would be the piece that I would differentiate, is simply the fact that there's tax revenues. If tax revenues were to go that way, then that's the concern, which is also why many people signed the petition to put 753 on the ballot, was again, that same kind of concern.
That's a whole nother rabbit trail I don't want to go down, is how those signatures were obtained, but
I was a volunteer circulator.
Yeah,
so,
I didn't ask a question, just for clarity. So again, I think the implication certainly is that you are concerned that public schools are not educating to that same level or to a satisfactory level.
Mm-hmm.
Your comment about the credits benefiting wealthy families is so upside down. I'm completely lost at how you would even claim that when the Opportunity Scholarship funds are specifically directed at the lowest income families first, and those that are struggling in their existing educational opportunities and military families. I think it's if those programs turn out to be successful, there's not a single dollar that will ever flow to a high income family by design.
It's what I was referring to, the tax credits. So those with more wealth who are able to afford to donate more of their income to 100% tax granting purpose, like the SGOs, that is obviously going to benefit the wealthy more.
So just for clarity again, under the Opportunity Scholarship Act, if I owe, I'll just pick a round number, if I owe $10,000 in taxes to the state, I can elect to give a portion of that to the scholarship granting organization and the balance to the state. There is no net gain. There is no gain.
You would
to
reduce
me
your taxable
as a
income.
taxpayer.
No, it doesn't.
No, it reduces my tax liability by zero.
So
I still write $10,000 worth of checks.
right, well, but again, that isn't going into state coffers either.
That's
which-
different than what you
right,
said, because you said it benefits wealthy individuals.
in
and
the
there
way
is-
that I already described.
There is $0 benefit.
Of that I've reduced my tax liability, the more, if I give the same $5,000 to an SGO versus the $5,000 to the food bank, for example, I don't get the same tax benefit from the $5,000 I give to the food bank.
But I still write $10,000 worth of checks. There's no net benefit to my household, to my personal
Certainly your
position.
tax situation is improved if you have it going to 100% tax credit.
Okay, I'm done arguing about that point. My last point, you say the private school per pupil cost would be much higher. I am currently paying for 2 of my grandchildren's private school. My kids went through K through 8 private.
Mm-hmm.
The average, I think what we're paying right now for my grandkids is roughly half of what the per pupil cost is in the district that we live in. And even if they choose to go to a private high school, it will be roughly equivalent to, or maybe slightly higher than the per pupil cost. I'm not sure how you arrive at this conclusion.
So it simply is, and I just want to take a quick glance here. So what we're really referring to is the fact that if the accountability standards were the same, if the same requirements were placed on private schools as what you see placed on public schools, there would naturally be a higher cost to those private schools with respect to their delivery systems. So whether that be through certain certifications and having to pay more for staff to, well, there are just a lot of examples for which obviously we don't have time to get into tonight. But the bottom line is, again, if the exact same standards were applied to private schools as to public, there would naturally be a higher cost to the private schools.
Okay, well, clearly we differ on the bottom line because the bottom line to me is the academic outcomes. So thank you for adding clarity to that. Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you for allowing me to be here.
Yeah, any other opponent testimony? Seeing none, anyone who'd like to testify in a neutral position? Seeing none, Senator Linehan, would you like to close?
Thank you all so very much. I feel really good. I'm leaving the legislature in very good hands. I just want to, there's no press here, so I'm going to be a little more blunt than I usually am. Stanford Schools and Open Sky are funded by the same people through tax-free foundations. For their donations, I've been through their 990s. All their funding is coming from tax-free money. The ironies. Two-tiered education system. Okay, I'll go to the next one. No discrimination. Education committee, 1, 2, 3, 4 of us on the education committee. How many parents have we heard from this year who tried to opt their child with a disability into a public school and they were refused because they have an IEP? In one case, it was an IEP because they had a loss of hearing. They weren't deaf, but they needed to wear a hearing aid, and therefore they were turned down for option enrollment from a public school. The program is capped at $25 million for the first 3 years. So this bill cannot make it cost more. It then can grow by 25% a year up to a maximum of 100 million, which will take 10 years. This bill does nothing to increase that. We don't raise the cap. The expanding of going from tuition to what it costs, it can't cost more than 75% of the average student cost in the state of Nebraska. So the cost per student is capped. It does not decrease funding for public schools. We have, thank you, Senator Meyer, others, we increase funding for public schools. And yes, some of the 328 million that we increased in funding for public schools did reduce some property taxes, but not most of them. They keep talking about how they're accountable and the private schools aren't accountable. I don't know, as we had in hearing last night about 11 o'clock in education, 66% of the children in Nebraska are not reading at grade level. How is that accountable? They test them, they show us the scores and ask for more money. There's no accountability. The private schools that qualify for this program have to be approved or accredited. They have to take standardized national normed test. In other words, they have to take the test that all the students across the country are taking. So when we look at them, we can see how we compare to Iowa and South Dakota and California and New Jersey and New York. We don't do that to the public schools. The public schools take a test that the Department of Ed creates. Then the Department of Ed decides what the cut scores are. Senator Myers very well. This year, we changed the cut score so we would have fewer needs improvement schools. I didn't have anybody come today. It doesn't matter what we say. It doesn't matter what the truth is. They're going to keep saying the same things. That's why they got people to sign the petitions. They keep saying it's public tax dollars. I've shown the Supreme Court case. There's 3 of them, U.S. Supreme Court cases that say tax credits are not public dollars. To claim otherwise is to claim that every dollar you own belongs to the state unless we let you keep it. There's also, and I've not talked about this in a hearing before, so I'm doing this more for public record. There was a case, Thone versus, I'm sorry, I should have brought my notes. In the 80s, it was a case in 82, Nebraska Supreme Court. We passed the bill, we still have it. We have scholarships to our state colleges and to our private colleges. The legislature passed it. Governor Thone and all the constitutional officers and the Attorney General challenged it because they said we could not use statements. These are statements. Could not use it for scholarships to private institutions. The Supreme Court said the legislature can do that if they believe it's for a good public purpose, and they lost and the legislature won. The legislature has the right to figure out what's a good public purpose and then fund that public purpose. So thank you for being here. Happy Valentine's.
Any questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you, Senator Linehan. That'll close our hearing on LB 1403. Oh, we do have letters. Thank you, Thomas. 1 proponent, 15 opponents, and 0 neutral. So that'll